вітаю нашого волі, я полкового знамена, дивлюсь на нього я востаннє, у нез'ясованій журбі, всю кров мою всі скидання, воно вібрало у собі.
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, everybody. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 203 of the stream. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be reporting on the past 48 hours of the war in Ukraine. And I'd also like y'all to know this going into tonight's stream. We are seeing that we're having some internet connectivity issues on our end right now. We don't know if that's being reflected to y'all on the stream, but I'm just going to give y'all a heads up right now that if there are any connectivity issues, lag problems, or anything like that, it is our internet provider screwing us over again due to their poor service, pretty much. And also, we upgraded the plan, and now our internet's worse. So just keep that in mind for the rest of the night. But the past 48 hours have been incredible. We've seen the Ukrainians take even more ground and push the Russians all the way to the Oskil River and the Kharkiv Oblast. Also, I would like to give a quick little mention to Sunday's fundraiser and also tell y'all its final result and also a little bit of drama that happened with it right after the stream was uploaded into a video. So the fundraiser closed on Sunday and we raised $20,500, just about, give or take about $100 from that, on the Sunday fundraiser, meaning that we've now raised nearly $470,000 worth of support for Ukraine through our fundraisers across the entirety of the war. And so, yeah! And really good, honestly, and hopefully in the next fundraiser, or the next two fundraisers, we can finally pass that $500,000 mark and make it to $500,000. Also, Operator Starsky was on stream that Sunday as well, and we had a very fun time streaming with him. And of course, after the stream, we actually talked a good bit after the stream and caught up with how things have been going on and what was happening. And so I heard today that Starsky was on his stream and he called us out and said that we were one of the best Ukraine news channels on the internet. He was behind the Elite Spring Army 100%, the whole channel 100%. And if Starsky's watching, and if any of y'all are fans of his channel and mine, I would also like y'all to go over there and let him know that we also think that the work he does in this war is incredible. He's done a great job, and he's helped us to fundraise so much over several fundraisers at this point. Some of our largest fundraisers were with him on, and I would love to say that he has an impressive channel, and I hope y'all go over there and tell him that we wish him the best, and he is one of the best channels covering this war. And so with all that out of the way, it is time to go into the news, and we've got some fun stuff today. We're actually going to be starting off in somewhat of a odd order, however, because some of y'all may see that there is something completely different in the title that has nothing to do with Ukraine, and it appears that war has begun in between Armenia and Azerbaijan once again. In case if y'all have not followed what has been happening in between Armenia and Azerbaijan, their history goes back hundreds, if not thousands of years. We won't cover the entirety of that, but if you do know about the Armenian genocide, then you'll be ahead of the curve on everyone else about the kind of, I guess you could say, cultural conflicts that the two sides have had. There is also a special region in Azerbaijan that is incredibly odd. It's called Nagorno-Karabakh. Let me make sure I actually get that pronunciation correct. Nagorno-Karabakh. And Nagorno-Karabakh is entirely within the borders of Azerbaijan. However, what is weird about Nagorno-Karabakh is that Nagorno-Karabakh is full of Armenians. 78% of the people who live there are Armenian, but all of them live within the country of Azerbaijan, which has created a load of cultural issues in that area due to how poorly the borders have formed over time. In recent years, there was actually a couple of wars in between Azerbaijan and the province of Nagorno-Karabakh that led to the Karabakh province kind of having its own unrecognized but semi-autonomous government, and the Armenians also have been continuously trying to reunite Nagorno-Karabakh with the rest of Armenia, or at least allow free travel in between those Armenians and the others, because families have been separated by this bit of a border issue. So, the Azerbaijanis, just last night, started to commit rocket missile attacks and also start to move troops over the border again into Armenia, which they did before in 2020, to To be honest with y'all, I don't even know what Azerbaijan's goal in this war is. We haven't really heard a clear official statement on why this is the case, or why they're starting to begin pretty much an offensive war against Armenia again. They got what they wanted in the last war. The Russians actually brokered a peace deal in between Armenia and Azerbaijan, which led to Azerbaijan getting control over all of the provinces surrounding Nagorno-Karabakh, and also a little bit more control over Nagorno-Karabakh itself. So I don't know what's caused this war, but according to Azerbaijan for now, until they can probably get an official statement put together, they say that it's in response to a buildup of Armenian forces on the border. However, here on this channel, we haven't been able to find any discernible proof of this buildup over the past few weeks. But with that, here's some of the videos showing the Azerbaijani forces attacking the Armenians. And y'all are also going to see something very odd here in a second, which is an S-300, an Armenian S-300, being destroyed by a Turkish-made Bayraktar being used by the Azerbaijanis. When you see the camera of the Azerbaijani Bayraktar looking down at the ground, and we can see that one of its guided bombs is now slammed into an S-300. This provocation is not odd, considering the historical conflicts that have always occurred in between Armenia, Azerbaijan, and neighboring countries like Turkey. Just in case you don't know the history of the Ottoman Empire, that's something for another time. But it's still incredibly odd to see it occur again with really no lead up to it, from what we can tell. We can also see another video of a Bayraktar attacking Armenian trenches somewhere in the area on the border. This is a very low quality video, but you can see the Armenian trench here, and what appears to be some soldiers, as the guided bomb then flies into the trench and explodes. Moving on further down the front line, we've also seen the Azerbaijanis using large amounts of artillery, firing MLRSs into Armenian cities. From what we could tell, these MLRS attacks were targeted at the town, if I can remember correctly. I believe that a couple of them were directed at Vardinis, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, and also the town of Izyum. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly as well. But we can also see that in the daylight hours, just some time ago, Armenian troops advancing in a massive formation through an open field. I'm sorry, not Armenian, Azerbaijani troops advancing forward in a massive open field towards the Armenian border. Also, let me get rid of that little ad there real quick. And with that, we're going to cut this video short here because I just wanted to show y'all a brief summary of what's been happening in the Armenian and Azerbaijani area over these past few hours, practically. It's only been occurring for less than a day. But we will try and keep apprised in this situation, and it appears, just because some people are wondering what does this have to do with anything, a lot of people are saying that the Iranians may get involved, the Turks may get involved, and also the Russians may get involved as well in one form or another. And so this may begin to become another international affair in its own right, as the Turks, the Iranians, and the Russians may be trying to pretty much combat each other by proxy in these areas. With that, we're now going to be moving into Ukraine and finally covering the news of the Ukrainian advances near the Oskil River, because, believe it or not, the Ukrainians have gained another massive swath of ground. As y'all may remember, on Sunday, we had the front lines of the Ukrainians in the direction of this highway called the T2114. Pretty much the Ukrainian front line stretched from north to south along this highway, and it had not moved at that point. However, over the past 48 hours, the Ukrainians have also taken this ground as well. We didn't get a lot of video evidence to confirm it, but we did get official reports from the Ukrainian government stating that the Russians have now been pushed across the Oskil River entirely, and so this land has been claimed by the Ukrainians, bringing up the claimed ground up to 3,383 square miles, which is a whopping swath of ground to have been captured in less than a week. Starting off, we can see that today, the Russians have now started to change the story of this war from a heroic liberation to a heroic and selfless defense of their nation and Russian-speaking people, which we can see here. Also, we're going to have to mute it, but you can see that this comes straight from the Russian Ministry of Defense's website. And we can see Russian Mi-35s lifting off of the ground to go, and of course now, instead of liberating Ukraine, they're now defending Russian people. We can now see that Mi-35 taking a hard turn, and now it looks like it's returning to an airfield. But the video pauses right there, and that gives me a little bit of fear. Oh, it popped back up again. We can now see the Mi-35 coming down the land. Also, once again, there's got to be something wrong with the engine in this Mi-35, because look how dark everything is behind the pretty much the exhaust. Matthew, look at that. It's like coal.
It's pretty dark, I gotta say.
There's something wrong with that engine that they haven't fixed yet, and I'm sure it's going to fall out of the sky eventually. With that, we're now going to be moving to the next bit of news from the Oskil River area, where we can see the, once again, invincible, quote-unquote, Russian war machine taking on the Ukrainians in the defense of these poor Russian people who, according to Russia, are now being put back under the control of a Nazi regime, which we all know the story behind that. Anyways, here's the video. Also, let me mute that because, once again, music was thrown in. We all love music, don't we? We now see the Russian grads moving around the front. And you know what's great about this video? Is that no matter how many videos the Russians try and pump out showing that they're doing something, the frontline situation is showing the completely opposite picture. And they're getting obliterated everywhere they go at this point and everything they try and do. We now see the grads firing once more. And just not doing it. It's just not ever going to do it. They can't stop the Ukrainians now, no matter how hard they try, what they throw at them. The Ukrainians just now have the upper hand. It will be this way until the end of the war, most likely, although the Russians could try and tip it back in their favor for a very short while. We're now going to be moving on from this bit of news, which occurred yesterday at day 202, and we're now going to be moving closer to the area of Kupyansk itself, where we saw Ukrainian M109 firing at Russian positions further in the distance. Of course, this was taken from inside the M109. Kind of a rarer film.
Во, время. Пора покормить худобу.
We now see them getting ready to fire.
Добрий ранок, суки!
We now see them fire the piece. And isn't that nice or what? It's always great to see that the Ukrainians are using foreign equipment like this M109 from the United States. And it's great to know that we keep on seeing Western support and Western vehicles being integrated more and more into Ukraine's forces as time goes by. It's a wonderful thing to see, and it shows that due to this war, the Ukrainian army will be modernized by the end of it, using entirely Western doctrine, tactics, and equipment as well, which is great to see. We're now going to be moving on into our next bit of news, which is just outside of Oskil from what we can tell. And also, let's see, Matthew says that I'm breaking up pretty badly. Let's see here. Trying to make sure that we're not breaking up too badly. Can you hear me, Matthew?
I can hear you now, but at other times you sound like Robo Enforcer.
Well, hopefully we can get through it. And once again, everyone, we are having some internet problems, so please bear with us. And also, If the stream goes down, we always put up one right afterwards, within minutes, so that way we can keep this thing going. So if it goes down, we're not down for the night, we're just down for a couple of minutes. Anyways, we're now moving to the next clip where we can see the SSO get a VMP. And it looks like the chat's saying they hear me fine, so I guess that may be just something on our end. We now see the intro giving a little bit of a summary. We now see the footage, which is in 240p. Goodness me. We now see the Ukrainians looking around in the distance and walking around on practically a patrol. They're not going out here to specifically destroy a Russian APC. They're really just going to try and find anything they can. We now see them moving down this grassy road in what appears to be the middle of the wilderness. And now, thankfully, the Ukrainian editors who made this video were were nice enough to highlight exactly where this BTR-80 is. We can see it right there on the right side of the screen in the highlighted area. The Ukrainian now aims the, I'm assuming that's an AT-4 at the BTR, hits it, and it's a solid hit to the direct side, knocking out that BTR-80 and destroying another Russian vehicle. BTR-80s cost around $300,000 to $400,000, so we just watched a Ukrainian, probably with an AT-4 that costs several $100s. AT-4 costs, let me check that real quick. $1,400. We saw a $1,400 AT-4 knock out a $400,000 APC. Once again, I know that monetary figures don't mean much, but when you think about it, they mean a whole lot. If the Ukrainians are able to destroy $400,000 of Russian equipment at $1,400 a pop, that's really cheap and efficient for the Ukrainians, and it means that they can continue to fund this war and keep it going for an incredibly long time if need be, although we know at this rate it'll probably be over soon. With that, that is all of the news that we've gotten from the area around Kupyansk, but as we move further south to the Izyum area, or once again, this starts to get a little bit confusing to me, is that there's a town called Oskil on the Oskil River, and so if you hear me say Oskil or near Oskil, I'll try and clarify from here forward if it's the Oskil River or if it's Oskil, the town south of Izyum. However, we saw the 72nd Mechanized Brigade in this area knocking out some more Russian tanks. We can see the Ukrainians looking down at this Russian BTR, and boom goes the dynamite right under the front of the BTR, knocking the thing out. Once again, very nice to see, and I'm glad to know that the 72nd Mechanized Brigade has pushed the Russians out of the Izyum area, liberated that city finally after months of occupation, and has now continued to obliterate the Russians in the area. We're now going to be moving to our next bit of news in the Kremmina area, where we saw Ukrainian troops on the advance. Now, this is something that I have shown on stream because we actually mentioned this on Sunday. Partisans liberated the town of Kremmina a couple of days ago, and Ukrainian forces are now making their way to the town to relieve the partisans. And so we can see some firefight footage from the Ukrainians in a location heading towards Kremmina, but we don't know exactly where, but according to the videos on the outskirts, but then again, we're not entirely sure. I'm going to bump this up to 720, and without further ado, here's the video. We can see the Ukrainian soldier firing an M4 and getting in a firefight with the Russians. We can now see them advancing. And this looks like a tree farm, because the trees are just so symmetrically laid out. We now see, now this is ballsy. Okay, this is really ballsy right here. We can see the Ukrainians get out on the street and start advancing down the road, and we already heard the Russians firing back at them, so we know there are Russians in this video. They get out on the open road, continue to advance towards the Russian position, and just start firing at it. That's ballsy. We see the Ukrainians continuing to advance, and here's something interesting to me. I haven't brought this up in a long time, but I am a reenactor, and so I do a lot of reenacting things, you know, pretty much. And at the end of it all, of course, reenactings always culminate in some kind of battle. That's the whole end goal of going to reenacting. So what's always interesting to me is that people are always critiquing, oh, look at that guy, you know, he's standing up. When there's enemies in front of him and he probably just gets shot down in real life. And look at all 5 of these Ukrainians advancing pretty much in a firing line in the wide open at the Russians, and none of them are being shot. And it does show, you know, because a lot of people have in their head that soldiers are some kind of a superhuman, you know, like each one of them is just, you know, in the zone. Everything's done like in the movies. There's always some kind of cover. They're rolling around in between cover, you know, literally rolling on their backs and stuff like that. In real life, soldiers are normal people, and normal people are going to do somewhat more normal things like this firing line. And I have to say, while it does seem a little bit dangerous, this is really cool to see that they're doing this, and so brave and ballsy enough to be able to just advance on a Russian position in the open, pretty much in a firing line. So with that, we're going to let the video continue. We see the Ukrainians are now kneeling once they've gotten into the grass, and it looks like they're actually lighting up some kind of a car.
Швидше! Дорогу крий! Швидко забрали відход!
You see that they've finished lighting up... Go ahead.
Enforcer, are these special forces or just normal troops?
From what I know, let me check this real quick. Group of the SPD company. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. These are special forces. But still,
I was about to say they're acting pretty ballsy, I must admit, to be regular troops. So I knew they had to be special in some capacity.
But still, when you think about it, you know, like versus the Hollywood depiction and these guys, whenever you see special forces in Hollywood, they're always like John Wick. You know, like they're jumping around from corner to corner. They're dual wielding guns. You know, they're always looking like everything, like. You know, it goes too well in the movies. You know, it's always like there's just a perfect thing for them to do at each time. And while these guys are special forces, and thank you so much, everyone, for clarifying that, because I didn't actually see that when I first watched the clip, it is interesting to see that even with them being special forces, they'll advance in the open, pretty much creating a firing line and firing onto the car. That is somewhat interesting to see.
Бігом! Фланг забирай, Серега!
Somebody said he sounded like Arnold.
No, get to the car, light up the car. Also, this is a voice modulator. They put it on every video. The Russians do too, and that's always why they sound, you know, like that. Just to explain that real quick, because everyone on these videos isn't some deep-voiced, you know, Ford advert narrator. We now see them running across the street after they've confirmed that the car has been lit up pretty well. And with that, that's the end of the video. And it is pretty neat to see that the Ukrainian Special Forces are, as far as we know, getting closer to Kremmina and getting closer to meeting those brave partisans that raised the Ukrainian flag over Kremmina just some time ago. We're now going to be moving on from this video, and we're actually not going to be moving down towards the Mykolaiivka and Bielorivka news. We're going to move north to a video that I think everyone will find very interesting. Incredibly interesting, actually. If you've ever heard of airplanes taking off, you'll know that there has to be some kind of distance in between two aircraft taking off in a similar place at a similar time, lest you run the chance of them running into each other. Of course, Russians don't really think rationally in that regard. They don't really think rationally about anything, honestly, so far we've seen in this war. But that's been with enlisted guys, is what we're all thinking, and what I'm thinking too. There's no way that the Russian Air Force and the pilots there would be stupid enough to do something dumb like take off 2 aircraft at the exact same time and run them into each other, would they? Well, that's exactly what they would do. Here's a video of an Su-25 running into another one and then promptly crashing into the ground, and from what we can tell, the pilot did not eject. So here's the video. When you see the 2 Su-25s taking off in an incredibly close formation, and we can see that this one already is having a little bit of a problem. This guy is not accelerating at the same speed as this one. And so he's going to clip the wing of the lead pilot. Right there. And he clipped it well enough that it's damaged the left wing so bad that the aircraft is now unrecoverable. You can see it going out of control, keeling over, and going straight down into the dirt. And ramming into the ground. The pilot was not able to eject. The Su-25 blew up on impact with the ground. Now, Matthew, do you think that's normal? Matthew?
Enforcer, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Not for a moment there. Oh, you're fading out.
Fading in and out. Let me make sure the connectivity of the stream is fine. The connectivity of the stream is fine. How about Discord, though? On Discord, it says it's good. So I don't know what's up with that, but can you hear me good now? I'm assuming Matthew can't hear me well, so unfortunately, I won't be able to have a chit-chat with Matthew for a minute. But moving on from the chit-chat I was hoping to have, this is not normal. And this also shows, once again, more stupidity on the Russians' part. You would assume, if they apparently did not have a wide enough runway, or if the pilots were not trained enough to take off in a close formation like that, you would assume that they would say something like, well, we'll let one take off, we'll let it orbit the field while the second one takes off, they'll join up, and then fly off towards the battlefield. Instead, they both take off together. Apparently the pilots didn't have the training or experience to really do something like that, and then we end up with this massive plume of smoke in the distance and a dead Russian pilot. So with that, that's the end of the video, and a pretty entertaining one at that. And so, now I'm kind of met with an obstacle. I have to move into a question segment here, but I don't know if Matthew can hear me well enough to pick up the cues to be able to read off the questions and also address the polls. So with that,
Enforcer, I can hear you for now, but I'm not sure how long it's going to last because I had to restart my Discord, and I'm not sure if it really fixed it. But let's see if we can get through it. So are we moving on to the question segment as of now?
Yes.
All right. So folks, up first, for the first question segment of the stream, we have 2 polls to address. And the first one said, did you know the Azerbaijan and Armenia conflict was warming up? It looks like 62% said yes, I had heard, only 10% said I may have heard something, and 28% said no, I had no idea. Now for me, I fall within the 10% camp that said they may have heard something. I wasn't really familiar with what was going on there, but I did know there have always been tensions in the region. But Enforcer, what are your thoughts on that poll?
I'm actually pretty surprised to hear that 62% of people had heard about the brewing tensions. Usually, Armenia and Azerbaijan are put on the back pages of news in the United States and around the world largely, especially even during the last war in between Armenia and Azerbaijan. It was mentioned for about 2 days, and then beyond that, it just went unnoticed, which is why I brought it up tonight. And of course, I saw a lot of people going, why are you talking about it? Move on, you know, and I'm trying to cover other things around the world that may be important, considering that this area has a history with genocides. This could become a pretty nasty situation pretty quickly, and that's why we're covering it, because it could turn into something like that if it goes really south. But still, it was interesting to me to hear that a lot of people did not know about the brewing tensions, but I would actually have to fall within that 62%. that said they knew about the brewing tensions because after the small conflict they had in 2020, the tensions never really died down beyond that point, and it's kind of been the Armenian-Azerbaijani area has pretty much been a flashpoint for conflict in the Caucasus region. It's just been this way for about the past few decades. During Soviet times, not so much. But recently it has really started to take off, especially because of the weird border issues that Armenia and Azerbaijan pretty much share. And so with that, I hope that addresses the poll, and we're on to the next one.
All right, and we do have one more poll, and the second one said, how ballsy are the Ukrainians running directly down the street? 80% said very ballsy, 15% said somewhat ballsy, and only 5% said not ballsy. Now, knowing that they're special forces now, I think very ballsy is a must. That comes standard as special forces in Ukraine. But Enforcer, what's your take?
I would have to say they were incredibly ballsy. Knowing they're special forces, that makes it even more interesting to me. But honestly, I've seen that kind of bravery being exhibited from the common Ukrainian soldier, and it's just par for the course at this point. But still, it doesn't remove the point that it's just super freaking ballsy for soldiers to just walk out in the wide open in a line firing at something. It just seems dangerous. It is dangerous, because there's no cover for them to hide behind if they start to get shot at. But you got to commend them for it. There's nothing else you can say. It was just incredibly ballsy of them. And so with that, I hope that addresses that poll. And we're now on to answer 3 questions from the chat. And after we answer those 3 questions, we'll then move into the next segment of news.
All right, and first up from our super chats, we have a very generous $100 donation from Gary Robbins, a longtime channel viewer and legend, who says, Slava Ukraine, I am so happy for the people of Ukraine. I would like you to have words to the opening song in English, as you used to do. I would like to post them elsewhere, or can you direct me to where I can find them?
Well, thank you so much for the massive amount of support, Gary. That does help our channel to run a massive load, and of course, it is the only thing that keeps this channel running. In case of y'all did not know, we don't run ads on streams. We've been running ads on our video segments that we've been creating on and off over the past 2 weeks because it helps to promote them, apparently. YouTube apparently incentivizes themselves to promote stuff that they can run ads on. So I was like, well, that's kind of messed up, but I guess you just got to work with the system. So I thank you so much for helping these streams to keep running, because your support is the only thing that makes that possible. Now, moving on to the question, in a way, I would like to have the words to the opening song in English, as you used to do. I think we still do that. If you're talking about the Ukrainian anthem, there should be an English translation on it, if I remember the opening correctly. But I think we also have it. We have a standalone video of the Ukrainian anthem on our stream. Well, not on our stream, on our channel that you can find that has that English translation on it. And so if you would like to go around and look for that on our channel, it should be there and it should be usable. Once again, I don't know who made that version of the Ukrainian anthem. It is sick, though. And also, I have to give huge credit to Mark Bohaichuk, who apparently is not around anymore, but he did the...
Oh, man.
Yeah, I was like, I wonder where he's gone, really. But I have to give him huge credit, because wherever he went, he did that translation for us, and that was a huge help for us, and also allowed a lot of our viewers, like me, who don't speak Ukrainian, to understand the lyrics of the Ukrainian anthem as they were sung. And so with that, I hope that answers your question fairly well, Gary Robbins, and thank you so much once again for the support. It helps us out a massive load. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And also, folks, please don't forget that if you have a question and don't want to put in a super chat, you can just tag your boy Enforcer Matt by putting @Enforcer Matt in the live chat and then your question behind it, and I will put it in the spreadsheet. And we always try to answer all the live chat questions we can at the end of the stream, so be sure to put yours in if I can get these words out of my mouth. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat, we have a $20 donation from SuperBonker9000. Who says, LSA is like my extended family, so please take a question from the chat. Slava Ukraine.
And Slava Ukraini. And we will take a live question from the chat.
All right, and this question is sponsored by SuperBonker9000, and this one goes to Sunray, who says, I heard that the Russians are protesting around the Kremlin. They had to close down the streets. Is there possibly a coup coming soon?
The protests, I've not been able to get videos about. I have been hearing about them, but sadly, I haven't been able to get videos to confirm them yet. However, considering that there are protests going on, given the current situation, we would really, honestly, to be honest with you, I can't really answer that question too well because it depends on what kind of protests or riots they are. If they're somewhat more peaceful and the Russian government has control on them and is mass arresting people, then it's not going to go anywhere. But if this is turned into a full-scale riot and they're throwing Molotovs at the cops and beating up cops to get caught in the riot, that could start to show that there are massive problems within Russia, economically, socially, and culturally, that could lead to a coup being possible and also very popular with the public. So I'm going to be honest with you, I would have to wait for more news on that to be able to give you a definite answer as to what's really going on there and what if a coup is likely or not, because right now, beyond just the suggestion that there are protests slash riots happening in Moscow, we don't have enough information to know what direction it's really heading in historically, because there have been, just in case you all don't know, there have been loads of riots and protests in the history of the world. There's been riots and protests in Germany, France, the United Kingdom, the United States. Any country in the world has had some kind of riot or protest. Most of them are survived, survivable. The United States has survived through loads of riots and protests through its history, spanning all the way from the very beginning, the Boston Massacre, which was pretty much a kind of a riot against the British soldiers in Boston, and all the way up till the present day with the riots and protests that go on for whatever's happening politically in the United States or anywhere else in the world. All of them have been survived. It's just that occasionally the perfect storm brews up, if you know what I'm saying. There's enough economic hardship along with a lot of anger and distrust, and also the government largely treating the people like crap, and also people within the government itself that do not like the people above them, that then lead to the whole entire thing being overthrown. You'll see that in the French Revolution. You'll see that in the Russian Revolution of 1917. In both of those instances, it was a perfect storm. But if it's not that kind of perfect storm with all of those elements kind of gathering around just to make the perfect instance, it most likely will not evolve into a coup. But with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well, and thank you so much once again for the support. I cannot overstate how much that helps this channel to keep on going. And so with that, we are on to the final question of this segment, and then we'll be moving into the next bit of news.
All right, and the final one of the segment goes to none other than Will Riley, who puts in a $20 donation, and he says, Dick Cheney believes that things are going quite well, thanks to himself mainly. You do know that he was leading the counterattack, right?
And I thank you so much, William Allen, for the support. No, wait a minute. Will Riley.
Yes, Will Riley.
I get them confused every time. I sit there.
AKA Dick Cheney.
Yeah, well, I'm just gonna call you Dick Cheney from now on, Will Riley, because for some reason, Will Riley and William Allen, I think it's just the Will that starts off both of them, just confuses me to no end for some reason. I can never get it right when I'm trying to say it. But anyways, Dick Cheney, it is good to hear that you were leading that counterattack, and it did incredibly well. It's done unbelievably well. It's taken 3,400 square miles of land, and also U.S. states by square mile. And let's go to this list, and let's see how big this area is compared to U.S. states. We can see that it is larger than both. Golly, that's a lot of ads on this page. But we can see that it's larger than both Delaware and Rhode Island combined. Which, when you think about it, and considering the United States is one of the largest countries in the world, that's a massive area to cover. And we included both of those, Delaware and Rhode Island. Jeez! When you think about that, Matthew, that's a lot of ground.
That is a ton of ground.
That's a ton of ground. I mean, honestly, I feel like that would be getting close to the size of Maryland. And when you think about a counterattack over a week's time taking an area the size of Maryland, that's unbelievable. And to think that the Ukrainians have done it, it's insane. And so, huge credit to Dick Cheney for leading that counterattack, because it's done incredibly well. Huge kudos. And so, with that, thank you so much for the support, William Allen. Do enjoy the Dick Cheney jokes. Keep them rolling, because they're almost a staple of this channel at this point. And so, with that, we are out of this question segment. We're now going to be moving into the next segment of news. If you have sent in a super chat tonight, or you are thinking about it, we do answer every single super chat by the end of the night, and we also answer live chat questions as well. You do not have to put in a super chat to have a question answered, but we do read off super chats first because they are the reason that we're able to keep running these streams, because they help us to pay the bills, keep the lights on, and also help us to eat. So we always want to make sure to answer their questions, because without our supporters, we wouldn't be able to do this. And so with that, we're now going to be moving into the next segment of news and into the Kharkiv area, where we saw some footage from the area north of the city of Kharkiv, specifically from a Ukrainian tank. And so here's the video, and it's got music. We can see the tank driving down the road and coming up on what appears to be a toasty little... Wait a minute! Is that a tractor? It is. It's a tractor. What in the world? Why is that here? And also we can see a burning Russian supply truck. It looks like a KAMAZ. We can now see the tank firing into the tree line. We can also see them inspecting some destroyed Russian tanks. We can now see the Ukrainians firing off the top of a pickup truck. Another destroyed Russian truck. A nice fire. Massive convoy that was destroyed. Jeez. We can also see them looking through some loot. A lot of loot. That's like a whole warehouse of loot. And with that, that's the end of that video, and it's pretty interesting to see what's been going on just north of Kharkiv over these past few days. And so with that, we're now going to be moving down into the city of Kharkiv, where I've seen something that is absolutely unfortunate, and something that you'll probably never see again. The Russians, of course, in retaliation for these massive and widely successful Ukrainian attacks in the Kharkiv region, have committed attacks against Ukrainians' power grid in retaliation for that. This has included attacks against power relay stations, power stations, and also just the electrical grid at large. And one of the main targets that the Russians have been trying to hit is the TES-5 power plant right outside of Kharkiv in the area of Rai-Olenivka. Last night, we saw that this power plant was hit by a Russian missile, leading to a massive explosion that can only be summarized as something around the size or larger than the size of the Lebanon explosion that occurred years ago. And so with that, here's the video of this TES-5 power plant exploding after another Russian missile strike.
Whoa.
Oh.
Dang. And that was from a power plant?
That was from a power plant. I don't know what in the world was in this power plant that could have caused that explosion, although I got some ideas. We'll go to satellite view and actually take a look at this power plant. So the TES-5 power plant is right here.
Enforcer, real quick. I saw somebody say it must have been a steam explosion from the boilers, and that makes sense.
That's what I was about to say, but my thought is, are the steam boilers large enough in this power plant to cause explosion to that magnitude? I don't know. I don't know if it also blew up some surrounding infrastructure. We could see that there are some kind of storage tanks, most likely for oil. But then again, we've seen those explode before, and we know. You know what? I would have to agree. I would have to say it was most likely the steam boilers. Because when you think about it, we have seen fuel silos explode before, and the walls of the silos can't hold enough pressure to create that kind of explosion with that kind of force and pressure behind it. A steam boiler, on the other hand, can operate at multiple hundreds of PSI. I don't know the exact PSI that these steam boilers would be running at, but a normal steam locomotive can run anywhere in between 170 to around 240, 250 PSI, and even higher depending on the class, but the average range was 170 to 250. And when a steam engine exploded back in the day, those things exploded with such force that they could usually be heard for dozens of miles around, and they would cause catastrophic damage to both, of course, the locomotive, the train that they were carrying, and the surrounding countryside generally. And so considering that this power plant most likely had several large water boilers in them, this explosion may have just been caused by the rupturing of the boilers themselves. So let's take a look at this video again, and also run a poll, Matthew, because I'd be interested if we could get some experts in our chat who may know about power production and how, I guess you could say, coal and geothermal power plants work. Would a steam boiler cause this kind of explosion, or would it be something else?
And that poll is going up right now.
All right, and let's check this out again, so that way we can give everyone a good idea of what exactly happened, so that way you can vote as accurately as possible in the poll. God.
That is insane,
That
the
is
amount
insane.
of power behind that.
It's such... I feel like, honestly, it would make a lot of sense for it to be a steam boiler. Now, an explosion normally can pretty much create a vapor out of the water in the air and create a cloud like this, a vapor cloud that extends outwards with the explosion. But this is, I don't know, I feel like, looking at that, I can't really tell you. 46% of y'all are saying it's the boilers, and I have to agree with y'all largely at this point. It's most likely the boilers that led to this kind of explosion. And of course, with an explosion of this size, there had to have been casualties at the power plant. We don't know how many, we don't know how extensive the damage to the plant has been, but I am fairly certain that this power plant has been knocked out entirely and will most likely not be operational until years after the war is over. And when you think about that, that's completely unsolicited and uncalled for the Russians to do. They're losing the war. And so their response to losing the war is to act like a spoiled brat losing a game and flip the game board and start blowing up power plants and infrastructure across Ukraine just to try and terrorize the civilian population and to just make the quality of life in Ukraine far worse. And when you think
Now, Enforcer, one quick question. I'm seeing a lot of people say it in the chat, and I wasn't going to mention it because I wasn't sure if it was actually possible or not, but could that have possibly been a thermobaric bomb? Maybe?
A thermobaric bomb, it could be possible. However, I feel like the Russians would have made an official statement that they had used one of those. Because, of course, we got to remember that when they used their hypersonic missile for the first time in this war, and the only time in this war, they made a large note of that. It's a huge propaganda thing to use special kinds of weapons. And so if they did use something like the father of all bombs, which is the largest thermobaric bomb in the world, the Russians surely would have made some kind of press release or some kind of propaganda coup about using that on the Test 5 power plant. So for that reason, I'm more so still leaning in the direction it was most likely the boilers that exploded. Because once again, I want y'all to keep this in mind. The Titanic, and everyone knows about the Titanic disaster, so I know this will be a familiar example. The boiler operators and the firemen stayed within the boilers of the Titanic while it was going down, so that way they could douse the flames and also try and vent the steam out of the boilers, so that way the ship wouldn't explode while it was sinking. If y'all don't know, if cold seawater, especially at that time of year in April when the water was still frigid, if that cold water had hit a burning hot boiler, it would have caused an unbelievable explosion, the likes of which you would rarely ever see in naval history, and it would have quite literally blown the Titanic into oblivion before most of the people could even get off the ship. So considering that historically it's been known that steam boilers have that kind of pressure to cause that kind of explosion, I would have to say that was most likely the steam boilers exploding, and also due to the fact the Russians haven't stated anything about this attack being special in any way. So with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well. But then again, I gotta say this. I could be wrong. That could have been a thermobaric bomb, and the Russians didn't make a huge deal about it. But I feel like if that had happened, the Ukrainians also would have made a massive deal about that attack as well, and the weapon that was used. And so with that, we're now going to be moving out of this area of the Test 5, and we're now going to be moving into our location unknowns. And we have several of them, both from day 102, day 203 and day 202. Starting off on day 202, we saw the SBU once again going around and destroying Russian equipment. We can see here a Russian recovery vehicle and also a Russian T-80B with a Z clearly painted on the front as this SBU drone looks down at it and now drops a bomblet clean through the hatch exploding within it and starting a fire.
And another one.
And another one. That fire is starting to brew up in there. You can see it right under the commander's hatch. It's starting to glow orange. And look at that. They got a 2-in-1 package here. They got the recovery vehicle and the tank. And now they're calling in heavy artillery. Jeez. And real quick after this, Matthew, remind me of this. HMS Barham. Tell me that after this video, because we're going to go back to the steam boiler discussion, because that's a historical example of steam boilers exploding on a ship. But we can now see another bomblet being dropped, this time on the recovery vehicle. Its hatches are, of course, open as well. But as far as I know, there's not a lot that is explosive within a recovery vehicle. There's a lot of flammable stuff in it, but nothing that will lead to an ammo detonation like the T-80 behind it. When you see that they continue to drop bomblets, and these things look like they pack a pretty good punch. We can now see that the T-80 is on fire. The recovery vehicle still appears to be largely intact, although the fire will most likely spread from the T-80 to the recovery vehicle and also burn it down as well. We now see the SBU dropping another bomblet onto the recovery vehicle, missing the hatch, unfortunately, but they did get close. Now see them dropping another one. And it's a little bit off to the top. We're probably about to see the drone adjust a little bit further down towards the bottom of the screen. Actually, it's moving over to the T-80. Oh, wait a minute. This has been fast-forwarded a lot. Observe, Matthew. Turret gone, turret in the field. So apparently, there was a turret toss that we couldn't see on screen. Based off of the information we have, what do y'all think, y'all? Do y'all think that was a good turret toss? A bad turret toss? Let us know in the live chat, because I think that was a pretty decent one considering how far away from the tank it is. But still, great to see that the Ukrainian SBU is continuously knocking out Russian vehicles. And with that, we are now on to the next bit of news, where we can see a pretty accurate hit. A really accurate hit. This is a video of fleeing Russians. We don't know where they are, but I would assume that they are in the northeastern Kharkiv area, considering that they're running. Although they're kind of running everywhere. When you see them running down this dirt road and towards this tree line, when you see about 4 of them, and an artillery shell landed right down on top of them, some of them went to sleep, some of them are now deciding to run away. Actually, I think all of them may have taken a good nap. We're going to pause the video right there and move on, because now the drone's going to get a close-up, and YouTube doesn't like us to show Russians sleeping on the job. Once again, it's against company policy, and we want to respect the Russians and their request to make sure that their employees do not get in trouble for any kind of sleeping on the job. With that, we're now going to be moving on into the next video, where we can see a Ukrainian artillerist firing an SPG, well, not an SPG, this is most likely the turret of a BMP-1 or some other similar vehicle, considering it's using a 73mm round, although it could be wrong. I think the BMP-1 uses a 76mm. But we can see this guy loading a 73mm cannon and firing it, and he almost spilled his coffee, and we can see that he's actually more worried about the coffee than the actual war. So with that, here's the video. You can see him getting around and loading it. Also, notice the venting on the charge. It looks like this may be a recoilless rifle of a sort, or at least a recoilless gun. I think, if I remember correctly, the BMP-1 may use recoilless rounds like this, but I'm not entirely sure. Don't quote me on that. And now there will be someone in our comments section, Matthew, in like a day or two saying, "Oh, you got that totally wrong. You ought to get your facts straight." Also, another thing that's interesting to me, I really like this, and it's a smart move, is using the stick to push the charge into the breach. In case y'all don't see, when he pushes the charge into the breach, the block flips up so quickly that if your hand was there, it could get snapped pretty easily. So a pretty smart move to use the stick. Now, you see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying here, Matthew? Notice when he fires this, the breach doesn't move at all. It may as well be like a cap gun. Yeah, and that's why I'm thinking it's a recoilless gun. Also, I can see Carl Hacker says that BMP-1 uses a low velocity 73mm. So I was correct the first time, and I second guessed myself and then got the caliber wrong. So sorry about that, y'all. But thank you for correcting me on that. But we can see here, he ejects the casing, and it... Did you hear that, Matthew? He went, "Ooh."
Wait a minute, go back.
and then he sees the coffee. The casing almost hit his coffee and knocked it over.
Разлилось.
So then he picks up the coffee and he does what we do before stream, which is take a little sip.
Had to make sure it's still good.
Yeah, you had to make sure it didn't have any kind of lead or powder in it.
It never hurts to taste it and see if you taste lead.
Yeah, you know, if you taste lead in your coffee and you live near a nuclear reactor, it's time to move. It's really time to leave at that point. But in this video, it's good to see that this guy was able to fire the gun, eject the casing, and the coffee was just in the right spot where it almost got knocked over, but it didn't. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into the day 203 news. And we've gotten a couple of interesting ones from today as well. Starting off, we got we had a very interesting video from the Russians. Now, if y'all have never seen this video before, this is a kind of a meme that's been circling around the internet a little bit lately. But let me see if I can pull it up for y'all. I have one dart and I missed. Let's see here. Here it is. I'm going
to get the copyright.
We're not going to get the copyright because you can see that this is being republished by loads of people. So I know that this one's fine, and also we're using it under the premise, just real quick, just so that way we can cover our P's and Q's. We're using this under the premise of fair use. It's used for commentary purposes, not news reporting, but it is being used for commentary purposes. And so here's the clip that I'm going to let y'all think of while we watch this next video. So... Actually, it does have copyrighted music in it. We can't play that video. However, I will explain what happened in it to y'all. This guy's sitting in a lawn chair with 3 balloons in front of him, and he says, "I only have one dart." And then he throws it, and he misses all of the balloons. And then he turns around, and he says, "And I missed." And that's the whole joke. Like, that's pretty much the whole video. Y'all can pull it up and check it if y'all want. But anyways, that's what I imagine in this video here. This is a video from the Russians showing them firing an ATGM at a Ukrainian supply van, and they somehow miss. Here's the video. When you see the van moving in the wide open. We can now hear the Concours. I actually think it's the other ATGM. It's not the Concours, but it's the other one that if I tried to pronounce on stream, I'd get in trouble with YouTube. But we can see it launch. The van is still on the move out there. And what kind of aiming is this?
What is that funky, like, path it's following?
Oh, it's like the operator is like giving it an old shimmy, because these things do kind of like wiggle around in flight. We've seen even the Stuckness do that as well, but not this much. It's like the guy's taking a little joystick and he's just slamming it left to right as it flies and just hoping it hits the van.
Прямо идет.
Look at this. And they miss. It's like
that is some Acme style like equipment.
Yes, this is the stupidest thing. And look at this. Somehow it looked like they were about to line this up right up onto the van, and then it literally does a Wile E. Coyote move, and then they just send it into orbit. It's going towards Sputnik now.
And then it turns around and comes back for the shooter.
Yeah, look, there it goes. This is some stupidity that's top notch now, and also this is crappy equipment. Combined, you get complete ineffectiveness. The van is completely unaware as to what's happened. It's still driving at the exact same speed. There's a Ukrainian in there listening to some music. You know, they're all just sitting in there chilling on their phones while this incompetent group of Russians just completely messes up their only job. And what in the world's that noise? Got some 1980s fax machine noises being made while this camera zooms back in.
Oh boy.
That's what sanctions get you. It gets you cameras that sound like they're dying animals when you zoom them back out. But that's the end of that video, and a pretty entertaining one to see at that. And it's good to know that the Ukrainians got away scot-free. With that, we're now moving on into the next clip of Location Unknown News, where we can see some la 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 la, and I just got copyrighted. But anyways, here's the video of Ukrainian HIMARS firing into the distance. We see this guy, of course, posing in front of the camera, and the HIMARS doing what they do best. And also, ooh, did you see that, Matthew? It looks like they have 2 more over here in reserve. They got a whole battery here.
Nice.
Man. You know, it's always impressive to see some of America's best tech for the army over there in Ukraine and in operation, and getting to see how it actually pairs up against the Russians. There's no question now, in the modern world, when you actually look at this clinically, U.S. equipment is leaps and bounds ahead of Russian equipment. There's no question. We win technologically in every single way, and the HIMARS is a clear example of that kind of, I guess you could say, technological gap that exists in between the Russians and us. Also, those are not ATACMS missiles. If they were, each of these HIMARS could only fire 1 rocket at a time, because a M142 HIMARS can only carry a single ATACMS missile at a time. But it can carry, I believe, 6 M39/M40s in a single, I guess you could say, salvo. So when you see them still launching off those missiles, and that's the end of the video, and it's pretty nice to see that the Ukrainians are still using those HIMARS, and that American weaponry is representing itself incredibly well, and leaves the world with no doubt that the United States of America, along with our allies, I want to make sure that I do not exclude our allies, like the British, the French, and the Germans, who've also provided some of their best equipment. For example, the British have provided their Stormers. They've also provided the Starstreak anti-air missiles. They've also provided armored personnel carriers and other kinds of weapons. The French have provided the Caesar. The Germans have provided the Panzerhaubitze 2000, just as one example for each country. And all of them have been incredibly well, and show that not only the United States, but the Western world in general is so far ahead of what the Russians can field that it's not even a fair fight anymore. If there was a conventional war to break out in between Russia and the West would win just by technological advantage alone. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from this video and into the next one, where we can see a Ukrainian BMP-3 in action. A Ukrainian BMP-3. This is exceptionally rare. The Ukrainians did have a couple of these, around 18 of them going into the war, and they've also captured several more, but here is one of those rare instances of those BMP-3s in action. That's also music. It sounds like the Home Depot theme. But we can see
It does.
we can see the BMP-3 firing into the distance on its camera, and now we can see it apparently fired its 30 millimeter. It's the 30 millimeter autocannon. So with that, that's the end of the video, and it's really interesting to see that the Ukrainians are using a BMP-3. In case of you all don't know, the BMP-3 is totally different than the BMP-1 or the BMP-2. I bet you didn't know that, Matthew, because it seems like it'd be logical that the BMP-3 would just be an improvement on the BMP-1 or the 2. But this thing was entirely redesigned. You can actually see that when you compare them to a BMP-2, which I'll show you right here, too, just as a real good comparison. There's a picture of a BMP-3. There's a picture of a BMP-2. Just to go through a quick little story to y'all as to how the Russians are incompetent, specifically the Soviet Union, which was the epitome of incompetence in every single aspect that you could imagine. The BMP-1 was the Russians' first attempt at an armored personnel carrier. This thing had a lot of problems, an ungodly amount of problems. It could carry enough soldiers, yes, but in terms of its firepower, in terms of its visibility, maneuverability, and where the crew was positioned inside the tank along with its ergonomics, it was poor. It was piss poor. It was terrible. The Russians, as soon as they adopted the BMP-1, they were looking for a replacement to the BMP-1. But of course, Soviet Union being the Soviet Union, you can't just go and drop the BMP-1. Imagine how many factory workers would be out of the job. Imagine how much retooling there would have to be. So they decided to just change the BMP-1, at least the aspects of it they didn't like, and then make it into something a little bit better. And so then they came up with the BMP-2. And it's the exact same. The hull is the exact same on both of these. The BMP-2 is just different in regards to the turret. The commander was moved from the hull behind the driver and into the turret with the gunner. They also switched out the gun from a 73mm recoilless gun, thank you everyone for correcting me on that earlier, to a 30mm autocannon. Also, on some other variants, they did have Concours ATGMs attached to the turret, and you could really do that with any BMP-2. However, there did come a problem with the new BMP-2. It now could not carry enough soldiers. It couldn't carry a whole squad. So you could carry some of the squad, but the rest of them would be left behind and would have to figure out another way to get to the front lines, which was supposed to be a serious problem. And so then, the Russians did something that you would not believe. Matthew, you remember the M3 half-track from the Second World War that the United States used, but was heavily outdated by the end?
Somewhat, yes.
So that's the M3 half-track. The Soviet Union liked the idea of the M3 half-track. They got a couple of them from the Lend-Lease in the Second World War, and so they decided to do something similar. They decided to make something, as I told Matthew off-stream, that was almost a copy. I'll introduce you to the BTR-152, which is Russia's attempt at making an M3 half-track, by and large. You can see it right here, and also right here as well. Notice the similarity?
Yes, except it's missing a tread or two.
So, here's what the Russians did. The BMP-1 didn't fulfill its role. They had to replace them with BMP-2s, and they still used a lot of BMP-1s. And because they now did not have enough armored personnel carriers to carry all of the troops in an armored personnel carrier, they kept these outdated BT-152s around to transport troops until the very end of the Cold War. The very end. They still use some of these to this day in supporting roles. And that tells you how backwards...
Unfortunately, I hate to say it, but I actually prefer it with the wheels better, actually.
I actually do, too. I think also wheeled vehicles do have advantages, like on road. They can, of course, travel at higher speeds. And I would have to say, honestly, just being honest with you, the BTR-152 does look better than the M3 half-track. However, this thing is heavily outdated by modern standards. It's not even really armored, you know, if you really look at its figures and details. And so... this thing's still kind of in use to this day, and it gives you an idea of how incompetent the Soviet government was. And remember, the Soviets existed until just about 30 years ago, and everything the Russian Federation is using in this war right now is from Soviet times. And so this kind of incompetence has been carried over the course of 30 years at this point to the present day. And now that brings me back to the BMP-3. The BMP-3 was supposed to be the solution to all of the problems that the BMP-1 and the BMP-2 had, and they kind of fixed them. This thing can now carry enough soldiers. It also has a decent enough amount of firepower, but it still has paper-thin armor, of course, like any armored personnel carrier would, and that's a bit of a shortcoming for it. It also has a pretty high profile. This thing is about, I think, 10 feet tall, 10 to 9 feet tall, which is pretty freaking high. It's a pretty big profile for an armored personnel carrier, much like the Bradley. Anyways, moving on from this whole entire speech about the BMP-3s and all, it's still crazy to see that the Ukrainians had 18 of them going into this war, and that they are using them to pretty good effect. And so with that, we're now going to be moving out of that small history lesson on Russian armored personnel carriers, and on into the last bit of news, where we can, well, last bit of news for the Location Unknown segment, not for the night. We still got news to cover, where we can see a Ukrainian under barrage, but he's got to eat that lunch. Here's the video. We can see the soldier in his trench with his friend. He's now putting down his rifle for a second. Joking around a little bit. That guy got pretty scared, actually.
Степан Андрійович, хочу, блядь, їсти, а не вмерти. Дай мені сухпайка. Кинь мені сухпайка, щоб нам сухпайка розбирали.
Та ж ми їли тільки що.
Придурку, там каша, нах. Дай сухпайка. Блядь, я зараз...
Now you can see him fighting with his friend over the food. He's like, give me the food, dang it.
Збоку кинь сухпайку.
Та я знаю, на курва.
Now he gives him his food. I gotta say, I like this guy. He seems like a silly fella, and of course, it's always fun to have fun people around, and you can tell this guy's a pretty fun one. Also, another thing, I loved it how now. Of course, I've got to say this. I would probably react the exact same way under these kinds of conditions, but what he did was like cartoonishly funny. How he like covered his head, jumped up in the air, and then went down to the ground. Let's watch that again. Of course, it's all in good fun. He didn't get hurt, so that's why we're joking around with it right now, because also his friend laughed at him, too.
And the timing was kind of bad. He was trying to be cool, and then he got interrupted by the missile.
Yeah. and then he just went right back to being cool. And honestly, you gotta give him huge brownie points for the recovery there, because while he did get freaked out for a second, he recovered perfectly fine. And I gotta say, I would like to hang out with this guy because he seems like a fun fella. But anyways, with that, that's the end of our Location Unknown news. Once again, interesting segments throughout, and also I like that after all of that, and obviously being scared, he's just like, dude, give me my food. It's lunch. It's time to eat. And so we're now going to be moving on out of the Location Unknowns and all the way back down to the area around Slovyansk, where we saw today that the Russians, of course, in their attempt to inflict terror and fear onto the Ukrainian population, they have now bombarded the town of Mykolaiv in the Donetsk Oblast right outside of Slovyansk. So here's the video of that happening.
Yes.
What in the world?
That was a big explosion. I don't know what caused it. You know, obviously it was a Russian bomb that caused it, but I don't know what kind of a round or caliber or what kind of weapon it was that would have caused such an explosion like that. It creates a hailstorm of dust and debris. It's like he's in a sandstorm.
Ёбаный в рот, бля!
Now the air is filled with soot and dirt, and that's the end of this video. We don't know where this happened specifically, as in Mykolaiv. As y'all have noticed over the stream, I have pointed out that a lot of Ukrainian towns share the same name, and through my research today, I found out, also due to that caption which led me to pull this up and research it, there are 9 Mykolaivkas in the Donetsk Oblast alone. So I don't know which Mykolaiv it was. The caption here says that it was within DPR territory, but from what we could tell, there's not a lot of Mykolaivkas in the DPR area of Donetsk. So I put it there, but we don't really know which Mykolaivka that was connected to. So with that, we're now going to be moving towards the area of Bielorivka, where we saw artillery raining down on the Russians, and once again, knocking a good amount of them out. So with that, here's the video. We can see Ukrainian artillery coming down in a nice little sheet on this tree line, in an incredibly accurate little area. And we can now see one of the tanks brewing up. We now see some Russian tanks moving across the field and getting hit. That doesn't look good. We can now see another Russian tank on the move and being hit. We can now see some of them bailing out and going for a jog. Ooh, oh my.
Ooh.
Oh.
That was a good one.
I think that may have been a mine, actually, because notice the explosion comes from under. And it goes out the back. Like, most of the explosion goes under the tank and out the back, right there. So I think that may have been a mine, but still pretty wild. We can now see another Russian tank moving down a road. Looks like it got hit by artillery or a mine. Did that guy just get slammed by a heavy artillery shell just running down the street? Oh, he almost did. Nope, he did.
They shot that whole round just to get that one guy?
I guess. I mean, like, it's
Wow.
like, I'm like, dang, that's a little overkill. But honestly, it's not too overkill because, you know, in Afghanistan, we would drop JDAMs on, you know, like one guy. But anyways, man. Oh my God, that was like a demolition. Did you see that? Look at
Let's
that.
see that again.
Look, the artillery shell hits the left side of the building. The whole thing just comes down.
Wow.
Oh my Lord. We now see them hitting a tree line at night. Also, we can see them hitting what appears to be some kind of a silo. Now we see artillery strike being hit near a highway and into, oh my God, wow, they just obliterated that house. It got turned into splinters. Jeez. Ukrainian artillery is scarily accurate that they could hit a house like that. We now see them dropping bomblets onto abandoned Russian tanks. And little
You know, really, the bomblets don't really pack much of a punch, actually.
Some of them don't. And I will say that it looks like a lot of their bomblets, to agree with you there, are kind of, I guess you could say, skill-based in a way with their damage. You pretty much have to drop those things straight through an open hatch for most of the time to be able to cause any real damage. Every other time, it looks like the Ukrainians are using a larger drone that's carrying RPG-7s. You know, like RPG-7 rounds, and then they just drop them. They kind of, you know, level out in flight, and then just slam right down onto the roof of the tank, and then puncture it and go through to the ammo. But with those tiny little egg bomblets, they just don't do much. You pretty much have to get them right through the hatch. We see that one missed the MTLB by a little bit. Ooh, wait a minute. We got a BMP-2 here. It looks like it had a little turret toss. We got another one over here that looks like a car in a scrapyard. Now we can see that that one's on fire. Oh! Let's watch that again. It looks like it was in the scrapyard. Now it looks like it's in a landfill. And we can also see another one over here having a little sparkler show for the kids on the 4th of July. With that, that's the end of the video, and it's great to see that this Ukrainian unit, also known as the 110th Separate Mechanized Brigade, was slamming the Russians once again in the Bila-Orivka area. We're now going to be moving out of this area. The area around Seversk, Slovyansk, and Bakhmut has largely fallen quiet as far as video evidence is concerned, although we have heard that the Russians are still trying their desperate attempts to break through towards Bakhmut, but it appears that it's never succeeded at this point, and most likely never will. With that, we're now going to be moving all the way out of the northern Donetsk area and down towards Donetsk city itself, where we saw artillery hitting Ukrainian positions. However, this footage was taken by a Ukrainian soldier and lets us know that these soldiers were able to survive this bombardment, although it was pretty heavy. Here's the video.
Сука, знали бы вы, как отбивается Херсон, это такой пиздец. Это такой пиздец.
See this guy sitting here and listening to the artillery barrage. Also sounds like there may be some gunfire and maybe ammo cooking off in the distance, although it's really hard to tell. The camera's now looking into the distance as the sun is setting. Artillery once again landing close nearby.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the video. And I gotta say, once again, gotta give a huge credit to the Ukrainians, as we do know the Russians outnumber them in terms of overall artillery pieces, and for that reason, they must get bombarded day and night. Although Russian artillery is largely inaccurate, it's still terrifying to be under a barrage like that almost constantly, and you gotta give huge credit to their bravery and their stoicism that they have the resolve to bear through it every single day of this war, 203 days in. We're now going to be moving out of the Donetsk area, and down towards our southern front. Now, real quick, Matthew, before I do that, have we gone through just one question segment or two?
Yes, so we've only gone through one, and I was wondering when we're going to get to the second.
All right, and so with that surprise question segment, we're now going to be going over the polls, and we're also going to be going over 3 questions from the chat. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, folks, and this is our second to last question segment of the stream, and we have 2 more polls to address. The first one said, do you think that the explosion of the power plant boilers caused the massive shockwave? It looks like 43% said yes, it was the boilers, 39% said maybe, and 18% said no, it was something else. Now, there was some debate in the chat as to whether it was maybe the transformers, or maybe even worse, a thermobaric bomb. There's really no way of knowing, it's sort of speculation at this point, but unfortunately, would you like to go over that one more time?
Yes. Could you restate that real quick in a short form? Because I just noticed someone said for me to pull up something about that ship, the HMS something that we didn't pull up, and since we're in a question segment, do you remember the name?
Of the ship?
Yes.
It was the HMS, let me tell you as I took it down in the notes, HMS Barham.
The HMS Barham. I knew it had ham in it, so let me put Barham. So HMS Barham. Oh my god, yeah. This will be a great one for y'all. So real quick, I'm gonna move this over to my screen. But we'll get right back to the question that Matthew asked me about. So with that, can you rephrase that question for me real quick?
So basically, the question was, do you think it was the boilers at the power plant that caused the massive shockwave?
I would say so. It seems like the most logical explanation, and since we are talking about those boilers and the shockwave, it's time for me to tell y'all the story of the HMS Barham, which was a Queen Elizabeth class battleship, which seems kind of ironic considering that Queen Elizabeth II just passed away, that we're talking about a Queen Elizabeth class ship, although this class in particular was named after Queen Elizabeth I. It actually was laid, the first ship of its class was laid down before Queen Elizabeth II was even born. So, you know, just clearing that up because I know someone's about to say something about it. Anyways, here's the HMS Barham, and we're going to go over its quick little story of its explosion and quick sinking after being attacked by a U-boat. So let me go here, and I'll try and summarize this real quick. The HMS Barham departed Alexandria, Egypt, as they hunted for Italian convoys in the Mediterranean. The German U-boat U-331, commanded by Oberleutnant Zursi Hans Dietrich von Tiesenhausen. Jeez, what a name! Imagine giving a medal to this fella. We're going to be giving a medal to Oberleutnant Zursi Hans Dietrich von Tiesenhausen. Detected the engine noise of the British ship. It moved to intercept. Let's see here. I'm trying to get to the part of the explosion. The Tiesenhausen, what a name! I can't get over that name. Ordered all 4 bow torpedoes to be fired at a range of 375 meters, which is really close. That's only about, for my American viewers, 4 football fields in length. So anyways, let's see. The boat's conning tower breached the surface and was fruitlessly engaged by one of the pom-poms, which is a 40mm Bofors gun, at a range of about 30 yards. The boat dived out of control after she broached, reaching an indicated depth of 869 feet, which is incredibly deep for a submarine of any class, even in the modern day. Anyways, moving forward, let's see, the Tiesenhausen, Tiesenhausen only apparently hit the Barham with 1 torpedo. Anyways, the torpedo struck the Barham quickly capsized to port and was lying on her side when a massive magazine explosion occurred about 4 minutes after she was torpedoed and sank her. The ship ascribed the final explosion to a 4-inch... Wait a minute, I'm sorry, but after reading this whole story, this is an ammunition explosion. This is not a boiler explosion. Let me go pull up ship boiler explosion. And let's go get a historical instance of that, because once I show this to y'all, y'all will be pretty blown away by what a boiler explosion can do. So let me go down to a list of boiler explosions. We'll try and find a maritime boiler, since those are far larger. Most likely in the modern 1900s. Matthew's telling me to hurry up. So let me see if I can find one real quick. Oh, man. I will go to this one. Let's see, operational history. Let's see. Dang it! I'm sorry. I can't pull it up. It's I don't want to bore y'all with this. But anyway, suffice it to say, I do believe it was the boilers. Boilers can explode and cause unbelievable damage. Boilers are incredibly dangerous if ruptured and then led to an explosion because of that. And so I hope that answers that poll, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next poll said, do you like the wheeled or tracked half-track? And it looks like 57% said they like the wheeled version, and 43% said I like the tracked version. So it looks like at least some of you also like the wheeled version. Now, you know, staying true to form, the tracked version is pretty cool, but for some reason, I don't know what it is, but I like the wheeled one just a little bit better.
I find the wheel one a little bit more interesting myself in terms of appearance. The M3 half-track and the BTR 152. The Czechs also made a similar version of the BTR 152 called something else. But when you look at it, I don't know. I mean, it's also because the BTR 152 was designed in the late 40s, early 50s, I believe, and the M3 half-track, I believe, was in service in the early 40s, maybe very late 30s. So there is a little bit of a time gap in between their designs and why they may look a little bit better, but still, I do appreciate the wheeled version a little bit more. Also, I think the attributes of having a tracked vehicle are sometimes overstated a little bit because a wheeled vehicle can traverse mud somewhat well, depending on how wide the wheelbase is and all that kind of stuff. You know, you can get into that. As long as you have enough surface area to distribute the weight across, a wheeled vehicle can do as fine as a tracked vehicle. And so in that regard, it's really coming down to preference. And I do think that the BTR 152's wheeled layout does look a little bit better than the tracks. But then again, that's just my opinion. It's an opinion. It's not a binding statement. And, you know, and so with that, I hope we addressed that poll fairly well. And we're now on to the questions. And so, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, folks, and moving on to the super chats. Up first, we have a very generous $75 donation from Mark, who says Armenia has appealed for the CSTO, basically invoking their equivalent of Article 5 of NATO, which puts Russia into a real bind. It just cannot handle that and Ukraine. The thought is regions will take advantage of the reality of Russian weakness and incompetence.
And thank you so much for the massive amount of support, Mark. And I actually did not know, at least I didn't think for any minute putting together tonight's news, that Armenia was a member of the CSTO. So let me go check that real quick. Oh my lord, it is. It's actually a member of the CSTO. Nuts, what? I never realized that. Thank you for sharing that with me. That's something new. CSTO. So Armenia is included in the CSTO in general, but it's also part of the Eurasian Economic Union. Nuts. But if I'm reading this correctly, Azerbaijan is also a member of the CSTO in a way. It's a part of a Commonwealth of Independent States. So, yikes, I don't really know. I've in that regard, considering that Azerbaijan is not completely out of the picture in terms of the CSTO, it kind of makes it like a dispute in between princes and the Holy Roman Empire in a way where the emperor has to step in and kind of quash the dispute through, I guess, diplomatic means, if you like to say that, or through force of arms, depending on the situation. But that is really interesting to note, Mark. I thank you for adding that in. And also, that is something interesting to point out, is that Russia cannot even handle Ukraine. How are they supposed to draw forces from the rest of Russia that most likely don't even have standard equipment anymore, and then send them in to try and deal with the problem with Azerbaijan and Armenia right now? It most likely couldn't happen. And if the Russians tried to do that, then they'd be stretched so thin. What if something else was to happen at the exact same time, which is likely anywhere else? What if there was another riot or a coup in Kazakhstan or in any of the Stand Series countries? Russia wouldn't be able to step in and probably deal with that either. And so that's a really interesting point. And I thank you very much for the support in bringing that up, because I think that may be showing that smaller countries may be finding their time to shine and get their own interest put first, since the Russians are too busy dealing with Ukraine to really focus on other things in the periphery. And so with that, I got to thank you so much once again for bringing it up. That was a genius point, and thank you so much for supporting this channel, so that way we can have time to be able to look at points like that, because that is the best one of this war yet, especially in what it means for other smaller countries that surround Russia, is that this type of stuff in between Armenia and Azerbaijan could run off the rails without Russia getting involved at all, for the large part. And of course, we'll have to wait and see if the Russians do uphold their agreement with the Armenians or not. And so with that, I hope that does address the comment fairly well, and thank you so much once again. And so we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $50 super chat from Tangen, formerly known as Tangen Brigiri, who says, "Yeehaw! Hit the like button, please."
And thank you so much for the support, Tangen. And also, considering you said hit the like button, right now is the perfect time for me to plug the subscribe button. Just in case if y'all do not know, we are less than 200 subscribers away from 100,000 subscribers. We are very close.
No.
Yeah, we are very close. We may reach it overnight, but I think it would be fun, and I think it would be really cool if we were able to reach it on tonight's stream. So if you would like, considering that we have a lot of people watching right now, and you have not subscribed, please make sure to subscribe, because you could be that 100,000 subscriber. You never know, and we may do something for the 100,000 subscriber. I'm thinking about that right now, but it may be, so we may try and, of course, give something to our 100,000 subscriber, because that's going to be a very special moment for us. And also, that's when, considering that we've had so little time over the past few days, because our channel's been growing at a very fast pace again, to get a face reveal ready, we're probably going to have to start working on the face reveal within the next day or two. And I don't think we'll be able to do all of the grand ideas that Matthew and me have had, because we're going to have so little time to prepare for it. But it'll still be something good nonetheless, and you'll finally be able to see who is behind the microphone. Although, I have to say this. I'm most likely, I'm definitely never going to show my face on stream, because I think it kind of cheapens the news a little bit. And so y'all will see me in the face reveal. Y'all may see me in normal videos, but y'all will not see me on a camera on a live stream. So with that, I hope that answers the comment. Well, I hope that adds a little bit fairly well as to why you should subscribe. And thank you so much, Tangen Brigiri, for suggesting that people hit that like button, because if you do, it helps us in the algorithms, and it helps us to reach more people, and it helps for this news to be seen by others. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the kind support, also the kind words as well. Liking the channel helps us out a lot. And with that, we're now on to the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving into our last segment of news.
All right, and for the final super chat of this second to last question segment, we have a $40 donation from Martin Van Own, who is a longtime channel viewer and supporter. And Martin, as always, we always appreciate your support, and we appreciate you being here for a very, very long time. And Enforcer, would you like to add anything to that?
Yes, I would. I would love to thank you so much for the support, Martin Van Owen, because it helps us out a massive load. And while you didn't throw in a comment, you have thrown in comments before, and they've always been incredibly kind, and they've always been interesting questions. And so I got to thank you so much for the support, and so much for helping this channel to keep on running, because y'all are the only thing that keeps this channel alive, keeps the wheels turning, and of course keeps us alive. So I gotta thank you so much for the support, because without it, this stream wouldn't have been possible. And so with that, we are going to be moving out of this question segment and into our final segment of news for the night, which will include our 3 bits of news from Kherson, our 2 bits from the Southern Front, and also the speech from President Zelensky. And so starting off in our Southern Front, near the area of Staromlinivka, we saw the Russians being hit by the 44th Artillery Brigade. Also, they got some music playing, but we can see some Russian vehicles right there, and the Ukrainians are about to stop that right now.
Wow, nice editing too.
Yeah, I like how the Ukrainians actually take some good effort into editing. Also, I just saw a fancy dancer say, "Show the corgis at 100K." Do you think we should, Matthew?
Maybe. I think Mr. Corgi's a little camera shy, though.
Yeah, he is a little camera shy. Sheba is just such a sweet little puppy. I love them both, but Sheba's got this little thing about her where she's just always happy. But we can now see the Russians still being hit. I'm trying to refresh my YouTube studio right now, because now we have to focus on that in the background as well. And the Ukrainians are doing a hell of a job hitting the Russians. Also, someone just pointed out we're at 99.8K. We're actually now only 150 subscribers away from 100,000, so we may be able to reach it before the end of tonight's stream.
Yeehaw.
Yeehaw! We can also see the Russians still being hit, and that's worth yeehawing. We can see a Kamaz right there, and it got obliterated. Gotta say, it's always impressive to see these kinds of films, and it's good to know that the Ukrainians are always inflicting massive casualties on Russian forces. We can also see one of them here putting on a fireworks show. It looks like a Roman candle. And with that, that's the end of the video, and an epic outro at that for this unit. And with that, we're now going to be moving on into our second bit of footage from the southern front, showing today the Ukrainians hitting the Russians once again with artillery in this area. Well, you see the footage start off looking at a Ukrainian village in the flat open plains. We now see some Russian tanks doing some driving simulator stuff out here in the open. I don't really know what they're doing. One's driving one way, one's driving the other. And we now see more tanks on the move. I'm assuming that all of them are Russian. We can kind of see the faint outline of Zs there. We can also see an APC right there. Looks like a BTR. We can also see a Russian flag clearly on this BTR, letting us know that what we're watching are Russian forces that are about to be obliterated. And of course, the Russians, being Russians, they never really pick anywhere smart to hide these vehicles. They're always either in a tree line, or they literally find a mechanic's garage or something similar and pull them into garage stalls, making it incredibly easy to destroy them all like they're some kind of snack pack. We now see more Russian tanks moving around this village. A lot of vehicles in this small area. And now it looks like smaller artillery rounds are starting to land around this area of this vehicle cluster, pretty much.
For some reason, I'm not sure if it'd be truly effective or not, but I would love to take an A-10 through there.
I would like to see if it is. The A-10 cannot puncture the armor of most Russian main battle tanks. However, it can demobilize and pretty much debilitate the tanks. It can knock out their engine, their tracks, also damage their gun barrel and other stuff like that. But it could never necessarily just blow through its armor and destroy it through an ammo detonation or anything like that with the gun alone. But it would be cool to see. I bet you that thing would be ripping them apart, though, regardless of what it actually did. Well, you now see the Ukrainians slamming into the garage. We can now see the garage has been completely destroyed. And now the Russians in the tree line are next, most likely. And then I just saw a viewer real quick say that the A-10's gun was designed to destroy Cold War tanks with an rolling eyes emoji. And real quick, we're actually going to stop that right here because I'm okay with people saying that said something that may need review and adjusting that. But you say it was sass and it's wrong, I'm going to have to get you. All right, so A-10. No, we're going to go for the Gal. We're just going to go straight for the Gal 30mm Avenger. Let's go to here. Let's go down to here. All right.
Of course, you know a poll is coming soon on that as well.
It sure is. You know it is. Armor penetration. All right. So let's read this and let's understand. A T-72's armor on the side of the tank is around 100mm or thicker. On the front of the tank, it's even more. It's hundreds of millimeters thick because of the composite armors like the quartz and such things that are inside of it. The A-10's gun at a distance of 300 meters, which is far, I guess you could say far too close to really fire off a decent spray, is 76 millimeters. At an actual distance of engagement at around 1,000 meters to 800 meters, it's a bit less. It's 64 to 59 millimeters. That means that there is no way whatsoever that an A-10 Warthog could bust through the armor of a tank and destroy it immediately. It could only debilitate it. It could detrack it. It could maybe hit the engine and cause a fire that would eventually lead the crew to bail. It could never destroy a single tank outright. It could destroy logistical vehicles like trucks. It could destroy APCs, SPGs, surface-to-air missile batteries if it was ever able to get close enough. It could destroy things like that, but a main battle tank, absolutely not. If you go and look at hell, let's just go look at a T-62 real quick. T-62 side armor. So let's see here. Let me go down. Armor on the hull alone, 79 millimeters on the hull upper sides, which is most likely where most of those rounds would hit. Most of them would not hit low. But you can see that all the way down at the bottom, which is literally the floor of the tank, which is facing towards the ground, it's 15 millimeters. So going off of that, there's no way that a A-10 Warthog, even being 300 meters away from an old school T-62, could puncture it and just destroy it outright. Debilitating, demobilizing, yes. Outright destruction, no. It's just not possible. The stats are not there.
Now, Enforcer, I have to say on the poll, it looks like 63% are saying it's a mere snack for the A-10.
Well, I mean, like it would be a snack. But saying that the A-10 can bust through a tank like you're watching the movie Saving Private Ryan, it's the Tiger tank at the end of the film, which just goes up in a ball of flames, that wouldn't happen. It would be a pretty lame looking kill. You would see the A-10 hit it, the tank would look fine for a second, you'd probably see a fire pop up in the engine bay, or it would be detracked and the crew would then bail, and then just abandon the vehicle since it was detracked. It would be something like that. It wouldn't be anything like watching the tank just go up in a ball of flames. And there was also testing done on M47 Pattons when the A-10 was in, I guess you could say, its prototype phase, and even against an M47 Patton, which was a very old tank at that time, the A-10's gun was not able to penetrate it at normal distances. So with that, I had to address that real quick, because I'm fine with people saying, can I review something? But if you're going to say it like that, I have to pull up the facts and defend it, because there's no way that that's possible under most situations. So with that,
although, Enforcer, could you put depleted uranium rounds in there, armor piercing?
I think all of I think those were armor piercing rounds that we were looking at. the Gal 30mm. Let me go check on that real quick. Let's see here. Armor penetration of armor-piercing incendiary ammunition, BHN 300 RHA. So that's the armor-piercing rounds. We can also see the 3 different rounds that it uses, and we can also see the one here that was tested. Apparently, was the depleted uranium version of the round, and that's how much penetration it can get at those ranges. Also, that was at a 30-degree angle of attack, so it was actually a pretty steep one. Usually, I believe in actual combat, the A-10 Warthog's angle of attack, considering it has to fly at a lower altitude, is even more shallow at like 15 to 20 degrees. But then again,
Enforcer, I see that the chat is getting really wild about the A-10, like always. The A-10, whenever that's brought up, always brings up a ton of opinions about whether or not it's effective.
And I'm not going to argue that it's not effective. The A-10 is effective with its hard points, and I've seen a lot of people saying that, and that's true. It has a lot of hard points. It can carry a lot of precision guided weapons. In that way, it's a great plane. The gun, however, I feel like it's almost always overrated. This thing is great for knocking out trucks, armored personnel carriers, but honestly, you can make that argument for the 20mm M61 Vulcan that comes on an F-15, an F-16, an F-22, or an F-35. The gun's cool, but I just think that it doesn't come up to snuff like most people would believe. I mean, especially going over the statistics of everything, it's just not there mathematically. Anyways, with that, we're going to go back to this video and watch these Russian tanks get blown apart. We now see the Ukrainians panning around again. We can see a squad of soldiers moving past some of the wrecked and abandoned vehicles on the side of the road, which I'm assuming they were Russian, as the Ukrainian artillery hit that spot just moments later. And so with that, that's the end of the video, and it's pretty impressive to see that the Ukrainian artillery is still raining down and hitting Russians in the southern front, although this does not suggest that there's any kind of offensive activity happening here at the moment. It just appears to be normal, I guess you could say, skirmishes that are occurring in between the Ukrainians and the Russians. With that, we're moving on to our last bit of news in the Kherson area, starting south of Davydiv Brid, where we saw a BMD-2 get destroyed by a drone. We don't know what kind of drone it was, but I'm assuming it was something similar to an R-18. You see the bomblet hit, and of course, put it into a nice ball of flames.
Wow, that was like a whole chunk going down.
Yeah. And those are causing some pretty sizable explosions. I don't know what kind of bomblets they're using here, but let's see if we can watch them drop a third one. Let's actually go back and watch that second one again. Right there. I don't know what in the world that would be.
It's like a brick.
Yeah, that thing's like a giant brick. Jeez.
But it was effective, though. That brick worked.
But with that, that's the end of the video, and it's pretty interesting to see another BMD-2 get destroyed. With that, we're now moving down to the area of Inhlivka, where we've seen two clips, although we don't know if they occurred exactly in this area, of a Typhoon MRAP being hit in a weird way. Now, Matthew, I need you to pay close attention to this video, because this Typhoon is going to be destroyed in the most unbelievable way imaginable.
Oh. Now, somebody mentioned last night they hate the vehicles that are really top-heavy like that, and there you go.
Well, I gotta say this. It is pretty nuts to see this giant Typhoon armored vehicle just tip over like a toy. And knowing the Russians, they'll leave it there. They'll just hop out. They won't even try and recover it. They'll just leave it where it is.
And the incline didn't even look that severe, really,
no,
from our angle.
It didn't. It didn't at all. That was just a crazy thing all around. It may have just been a ditch that it kind of backed into, and because it's so top heavy, it just flipped on over. But still, pretty crazy to see. With that, we're now going to move on to our last bit of news from the Kherson area, where we can see a Stugna long shot. This may be the longest shot that's been committed with a Stugna over the course of this war, with a 4.7 kilometer distance. And so with that, here's the video.
Подпалил. Горит.
So with that, that's the end of that video, and that may be one of the longest range shots that the Stugna has taken and hit over the course of this war. And so with that, of course, there's not a lot to report from the Kherson area. Of course, we are still respecting the media blackout for operational security purposes, and so we cannot update the front lines even if we do have information showing that there has been movement here. However, it does seem that this Kherson counterattack has started to die down after the massive successes in the north that the Ukrainians have had over the past week, suggesting that may have been a ruse the entire time to have Russian forces relocate to the south for the Ukrainian offensive in the north to begin. With that, we're now going to be moving to Kyiv to cover the last thing of our news for the night, which is the speech from President Zelensky, and after that speech is over, we'll then be moving on in to the question segment for the rest of the night. And so without further ado, here's the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці. Провів сьогодні чергову ставку Верховного Головнокомандувача. Учасники, як і раніше, Резніков, Залужний, Сирський, Ковальчук, Літвінов, Єрмак, Монастирський, Кубраков, Данілов, Лебідь та інші. Перше головне питання – доповіді командуючих за напрямками. Олександр Сирський доповів про успіхи на Харківщині. Андрій Ковальчук про рух наших сил на півдні. Розглянули проєкт бюджету на оборону і безпеку на наступний рік. Детально проаналізували ситуацію на звільненій території нашої держави. Станом на цей час стабілізаційні заходи завершено в районах загальною площею понад 4 тисячі квадратних кілометрів. Ще на приблизно такій же звільненій території стабілізація триває. Виявляються залишки окупантів, диверсійних груп, затримуються колаборанти, повертається повна безпека. Прикордонникам доручено забезпечити охорону державного кордону на ділянках на звільненій території. Ще раз дякую усім нашим бійцям, які забезпечили такий масштабний, швидкий розгром окупантів на території Харківської області. До речі, підписав сьогодні черговий указ про нагородження наших воїнів. 153 учасника бойових дій відзначені державними нагородами, із них 12 посмертно. Усі за хоробрість в боях на сході нашої країни, на Харківщині, на Донбасі. Дуже важливо, що разом з нашими військами, з нашим прапором на деокуповану територію заходить і звичайне нормальне життя. Як приклад, у Балаклії, у Граковому вже почалась видача пенсії одразу за 5 місяців. За той час, коли ми просто не могли здійснити виплати через окупацію. І всі українські пенсіонери на звільненій території отримують виплати. Україна завжди виконує свої соціальні зобов'язання перед людьми. Провів сьогодні зустріч з міністрами оборони Данії та Естонії, які прибули в Київ. Звичайно, говорили про подальшу підтримку нашої держави, про подальший тиск на Росію. Подякував їм за принципову і послідовну допомогу в захисті свободи і життя людей. Провів переговори з директоркою Міжнародного валютного фонду Крісталіною Георгієвою. Подякував за виділення $1 мільярд 400 мільйонів додаткової підтримки для нашої держави. Обговорили нову програму співпраці і загалом збереження фінансової стабільності України. Маємо результат в нашій роботі над гарантіями безпеки для нашої держави. Сьогодні був презентований пакет рекомендацій міжнародної групи під керівництвом Андрія Єрмака і Андерса Фограсмусена. Саме такі рекомендації мають увійти в основу майбутньої системи безпекових договорів, які дадуть українцям спокій і зможуть гарантувати недопущення будь-якої війни проти України. Ми працюємо над тим, щоб гарантами безпеки нашої держави стали найсильніші суб'єкти вільного світу, щоб на багатосторонньому та двосторонньому рівні було детально визначено, хто, як і коли має реагувати, якщо виникне будь-яка загроза державній безпеці України. Реагувати санкціями, постачанням зброї, усією необхідною матеріальною і фінансовою підтримкою. Головне – чіткі і юридично обов'язкові кроки, конкретні і вчасні дії, зокрема превентивні дії, направлені на недопущення війни і охолодження намірів агресора. Тобто все те, чого у нашої держави не було раніше, і через що Росія знаходилась в ілюзії, ніби їй можна зійти з рук війна проти України. Ми вже побудували разом з нашими партнерами потужну антивоєнну коаліцію, до якої входять десятки різних держав. А тепер працюємо над тим, щоб найпотужніші держави, які нам вже допомагають, стали й коаліцією миру, який триватиме постійно. Говорив сьогодні з прем'єр-міністром Італії Маріо Драгі. Поінформував його про ситуацію на передовій, про успіхи нашої держави. Ми завжди відзначаємо, у кожній перемозі України є і перемога тих, хто разом із нами захищає свободу, захищає європейські цінності. Італія серед найміцніших. Дуже детально обговорили з паном Драгі ситуацію на Запорізькій атомній станції, чергові російські провокації. Дякую за розуміння, що демілітаризація ЗАЕС – це фундаментальна умова для повернення радіаційної безпеки усім нам в Європі. Дякую всім, хто допомагає нашій державі виганяти окупантів. Дякую кожному нашому воїну, який робить все, щоб наблизити перемогу. Слава Україні!
With that,
Love Ukraine.
Slava Ukraini. And that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 203 of the war. And that rounds out our news segment for the night. If you're here for the news segment alone, I thank you so much for watching. It has been an absolute pleasure to cover the news with y'all and, of course, have some interesting conversations and questions. If you did enjoy, please make sure to subscribe because we are currently only 130 subscribers away from reaching 100,000. So, please make sure to subscribe because tomorrow when I wake up, because I'm not sure if it'll happen on stream tonight or not, unless if you subscribe, we will probably have reached 100,000 subscribers, and we will make sure to let the entire world know. I thank you all so much once again for watching, and with that, we're now going to be moving into the question segment, and before we get to anything, Matthew, the A10 stuff in the live chat has kept on going, and so I have to make sure to try and present my side as best I can, and I've seen a lot of people quoting.
Now, unfortunately, I will say we actually have a poll on that, and it's the second one that I have in my queue. If you'd like to hold your commentary until the poll.
Sure. And with that, we'll actually cover the polls until we get to that one, and then we'll get back into that again.
All right, folks, and we now are moving into our final question segment of the stream, and we have 3 polls to go over that I think are pretty decent. Up first, the first one said, with Russia suffering a severe pushback from the Ukrainians, which of the following will happen? It looks like 39% said a coup against Putin's regime, 29% said none of the above, 23% said collapse of Russian government, and 8% said assassination of Putin. So it appears most of you on the poll believe that a coup is going to take place. Now, on this one, I'm kind of torn. To be honest with you, I'm not really sure what to think, but I wouldn't say a coup is going to happen. I would say, if anything, Putin would probably stay in power, and he might use a weapon of mass destruction, would be my guess. So I guess I would be in the none of the above camp. But Enforcer, what are your thoughts?
I think a coup would most likely happen. The government collapsing outright most likely will never happen, but a coup against Putin and an installation of new leaders could happen. So I would kind of have to fall into the camp if this failed. I could see Putin going in the way of the Argentine dictator during the Falklands War and having to flee or give up control of the government to a new junta. That's what I'm believing by and large, so I would have to agree with the majority of people that it would most likely turn into a coup. And so with that, I hope I've been able to address that poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And beware, folks, we are moving into the second poll, which is the one about the A-10s. So very contentious. But the question was, would the A-10 make easy work of those tanks? And it looks like 63% said, yes, it is a mere snack for the A-10. It looks like 27% said, maybe, but I don't know for certain. And only 10% said, no, it would not affect them. And obviously, this didn't get into the type of ammunition used or any other factors, but generally speaking, it looks like 63% believe that is mere snack. But Enforcer, now is your time to go on your commentary.
All right, so to get back to this, I think when I sat there and said the A-10 is not as effective as people imagine, a lot of people heard that and immediately shut down and didn't listen to anything else I said, because I've seen a lot of people saying stuff that I had already said. I said it wouldn't penetrate the armor, but it could demobilize the tank and lead it to becoming inoperable, where the crew would bail out and leave it, although the tank would still largely be intact and it wouldn't go up in a ball of flame from an ammunition explosion. Now, I saw a lot of people quoting a specific study from the 422nd and 59th Test and Evaluation Squadrons about the effectiveness of the A-10 gun, and a lot of people were saying, they said it can destroy a tank, and I went and found an article that spoke about that exact study, and if we read it, it says that these test evaluation wings state that analysts were able to ascertain the battle damage inflicted upon the tanks and determined that the tanks were rendered inoperative. They didn't say destroyed, they said rendered inoperative, much like I was saying about it being detract or getting hit in the engine and having a fire break out or something similar to that. The A-10's gun mathematically cannot penetrate modern tanks' armor. It can demobilize them, it can render them, like they said here, inoperative, but it could not do what a Stugna does, just blowing the tank up into a massive ball where it has a turret toss. That's not possible. And we've already gone over the math. and I don't mean to say this way, but just because you think the A-10's gun is good doesn't mean that it magically gets enough armor penetration qualities to the ammo it uses to then punch through everything and destroy it. It's not there. And the Gulf War, most of the A-10's kills came from Maverick missiles, not the gun. And the kills that did come from the gun were mostly on softer targets and very rarely on things like T-62s, T-64s. Well, no, not T-64s. They weren't used in the Gulf War. T-62s, T-72s, and the like. Also, now as people are saying, an operative tank is a dead tank. I know that, but I'm saying that a lot of people earlier were saying that the A-10's gun can punch through anything. And it can't. It can render tanks inoperable through more passive means than just blowing the thing up with a gun. Also, to settle this the best I could, I found some film footage, which we're using under fair use. We're going to check this out. This is test footage from the 70s when this plane was being introduced into service, and we're going to see what it can do against a tank in this footage. So let's skip forward a little bit. Oh, wait a minute. I think we may be getting attacked for a second because it looks like our stream has no data for a second. So let's give it a second. Okay, it's back.
Right when you showed the video.
Yeah, it's someone's like, oh, and they've tried to attack us, but I'm trying to show you the thing. Okay, here we go. This is a T-62. How did the United States get a T-62 in the 70s? Probably from Vietnam. But anyways, the A-10 fires. It hits the side, and let's see if we can get some close-up footage. So we can see a fire break out. This looks like it's coming from inside the turret, actually. Wait a minute. Right there. Engine fire that spread to the rest of the vehicle. And now people are saying pull up new videos. This is when the A-10 was tested. This is when most of the figures came out. And so it did get destroyed, but still, the point stands. It's not able to penetrate most of the armor on the tank. Roof armor, maybe. That's if it's coming in at a high enough angle. And we already know, based off of combat experience with the A-10, it's usually not able to attack at a high enough angle like a Dauntless dive bomber that it can shoot through the roof. It's usually shooting almost at the side of the vehicle. We can see it cause an engine fire, which then spreads to the turret and causes it to blow up. And it renders it, of course, inoperable, which is what I'm saying. But the thing is, the point I'm trying to prove is that the A-10's gun is not what they call a tank buster. It's not shooting straight through the armor. It's just hitting the softer parts of the vehicle, like the tracks, detracking it, or hitting the engine bay and causing a fire, which then spreads to the rest of the vehicle and burns it down. So, with that...
Fair point.
Yeah, with that, I hope that clarifies it, because I know people are still going to be saying, because I've seen, I don't know how to explain. I've seen people who are not listening to anything I'm saying beyond... Enforcer,
you have to admit, it's very hard to change people's minds about the A-10 because it's just such a legendary aircraft. It's going to be tough to tell people it's not what it cracked up to be. But to me personally, I do get your point, Enforcer, but to me, it did a pretty good number on that tank, in my opinion. At least good enough for me.
It did, no question. But still, I'm trying to just talk about the point alone. I'm not talking about the tank. The gun cannot destroy a tank. I've said, a lot of times, it may not destroy the tank by blowing it up, but it will render it inoperable where a crew will abandon the tank at least. That's.
And wait, and Enforcer, does this tank have a Z on it?
Oh no, this is just more. It's like a ZD or something like that over here on the right side, and this looks like this looks like other letters. It looks like a Greek letter from the Greek alphabet. I'm not really sure what those are, honestly, but still, the whole thing I'm trying to pretty much say is that the gun mathematically against armor, even on older tanks like this M48 Patton that we just saw get hit. It can't punch right through it. It has to hit something softer on the vehicle, which then slowly leads to it burning out, and then the crew most likely abandoning it. A-10 destroying a tank outright is almost unheard of. It's almost impossible. So with that, I hope I've been able to address that fairly well with facts and figures. And now everyone's going to flip to the argument of, well, it uses Mavericks, and I know that, and it has plenty of hard points and all that stuff. I'm just trying to talk about the values of the gun. And the gun, while good, it's not good enough. It can render tanks inoperable, but it's not this magical thing that can punch through everything and just blow it up in 2 shots. It's just not there. So with that, I hope I've addressed that fairly well. If you see where I'm coming from, that's nice. If you don't, that's fine too. I'm just trying to get my point out there. The A-10's good. It's a great plane, but it does have shortcomings, and the gun isn't as great as it's been made out to be for decades. And so with that, we are now going to move on into the questions if we don't have any more polls.
So we do have one more poll to get to, and folks, also one more thing. The A-10 has been an ongoing debate for a very long time on the channel. We are going to have to make an effort to get an A-10 expert, or at least a former pilot, on the stream at some point, because this has been the most long-term debate I think we've had on anything on the channel. So we're going to be working on that in the background. But in the meantime, to address our final poll, this one said, let's settle it. Was it a thermobaric bomb on the power plant in the beginning of the stream? It looks like only 47% said yes and 53% said no. So even though the no's won out, it was pretty close between the two. And as we've said, we really don't know for certain. We think it was the boilers, but it could have been a thermobaric bomb of some sort.
It's a really close call, and I'm not really sure either. I'm going with it was most likely a boiler explosion or multiple boilers exploding at the same time, which when one explodes, it ruptures the others and causes a chain reaction. That's at least what's been seen historically. But I don't really know. I mean, it's an unknown. It could have been a thermobaric bomb. We're not entirely sure. So with that, it's a really close poll. It kind of almost indicates exactly what we're thinking, which is that we don't really know. It could be either one. I'm kind of on the fence, although I'm still leaning into the boiler explosion category. And so with that, we are now going to move on into the questions.
All right, and while I gather this last one right here, there we go. Moving on to our first super chat of the last question segment of the night, we have a very generous $75 donation from Martin Van Owen once again. And I think he already got off for the night, sadly. But he says, thank you very much, from Grimsby, Ontario, Canada. And I'm not sure if we've actually looked at that region before.
I don't think we have, and I have to thank you so much, Martin Van Owen, for throwing in a second super chat just to address the first one. For some reason, I'm typing in Martin Van Owen, like it's going to pull you up directly. But let's go to Grimsby, Ontario, Canada, and take a look at your town. So where is this? This is near Niagara Falls, actually. Neat, that's really cool. Also, if y'all didn't know, this was a site of a pretty interesting battle and massacres in the War of 1812 by both sides, which I bet no one knew, but we'll cover that in a video probably. Anyways, let's go over here and check out your town of Grimsby in Ontario. We also have British viewers that live in Grimsby, so let's drop down over here. Honestly, Matthew, this looks like an American town.
It does, really. It looks like somewhere out in somewhat rural Alabama.
Yeah, it kind of does. Let's go over here real quick and let's see what this neighborhood looks like. I like, oh my god, the grass is so green. It's like that grass, it's like they spray paint the grass up there or something.
I guess you could say the grass is greener here.
The grass is greener, but beyond that, it looks like a normal American suburb, which is really cool and interesting to see. Canada and the United States are similar in a lot of ways, resource-wise. Culturally, they're different, but housing-wise and things like that, they're very similar. It's really hard to see differences sometimes. Like here, you could honestly tell me that this was in Virginia in the United States, and I would not doubt you for a second. I would assume this was in Virginia. But with that, thank you so much once again for the incredible support, Martin Van Owen. You are helping this stream to keep on rolling, so that way we can get into fistfights over the A-10. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $50 super chat from Magic Skygirl, who says, how many subs did you have before February 24th, 2022? And that is a very specific question.
I had 110 subs before February 24th. It's very hard, if y'all don't know, it's very hard to gain traction on YouTube just because of the sheer quantity of YouTube channels. There are 30 million active YouTube channels out there, and all of them, a lot of them, are trying to create videos that get traction and then they go up in the algorithms. And I've been trying that for a while. I did current events at the start, and then I went into gaming, and it was very difficult to do any of them and have people watch, even when I was doing current events like this, because you're just another channel among millions. You know, the algorithm doesn't really put you out there to people. But for some reason, I did the Ukraine war streams, and I did them for about 4 days straight, and I didn't get a lot of subscribers from them then, or a lot of viewers from them at that point. But for some reason, on the 28th of February, YouTube decided that it was time for me to go to the big screen. And so they promoted me in the algorithms. They put me on the main page of YouTube. And a whole load of people got on the stream then. I got 1,800 subscribers overnight. And then from there, the channels just continued to grow. But I hope that answers your question, Magic Sky Girl. And I thank you so much once again for the support. And also, it's been super fun talking to you in Discord calls. I've talked to several of y'all in Discord calls, like Psyops, Magic Sky Girl, among a whole bunch of other people like Hiveland Tough, and it's been very fun to talk to all of y'all, and I thank y'all so much for helping this channel to keep on running still. And so with that, everyone take a sip. It is time to move on to the next question, and thank you so much once again.
All right, and next up, we have a $25 super chat from the Duncan VR. Oh, and he's going to put me back through the ringer once again. I had a one-night little hiatus from the sheep noises, and now we're back to it. Duncan says, Matthew liked my question format in the fundraiser, but he really missed the Russian animal sounds. Ba, 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 ba. Steven Seagal has Putin's underwear in his mouth. Ba, ba, meow, 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 meow. Drop a nuke on the Kremlin.
Oh, man. Duncan VR's got you making cat noises, and then in the middle of it, Chairman Mao.
I was like, where'd the Mao come in?
Oh, wait a minute, hang on. I've gotta do this.
What's up, Beijing?
Wait, no, not that. We could get in trouble for that one. Because YouTube's a little touchy about that kind of stuff. But here's what I was almost imagining in my head when Matthew was reading that off. Meow, 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 meow. Meow, meow. But that's what I was imagining nearly. But I thank you so much for the support, Duncan VR, and also thank you for letting me have a really good laugh there. That was a really original one, and I gotta say thank you so much for always being here and supporting this channel, and also always having interesting jokes and animal noises to torture Matthew with. And so with that, I hope that addresses the comment fairly well, and thank you so much once again for the support. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And next up, a big shout out to Randy Johnson and also BC Skyman for each putting in a $20 donation. Thank you very much to both of you, Randy and BC. You are both channel legends, and we appreciate you very, very, very much. And also, okay. I saw a questionable comment over there, but the person's not a bot. So, anyways, moving right along, before I move on, I want to ask the Enforcer, do you want to add anything to that?
Could you reread that one again real quick?
So it actually wasn't a comment. It was just 2 donations from legend BC Skyman and Randy Johnson.
Hey, BC Skyman's in there. And I got to thank you, BC Skyman, for the support. You are always here and always helping out this channel a lot. And I've got to thank you so much for helping us to keep this thing running, because without viewers like you and everyone else, this wouldn't be possible. And so I want to thank the both of y'all once again for y'all's support, because without it, it wouldn't be possible to keep this channel rolling. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And next up, we have a $20 super chat from George A., who says, you guys are heroes of Ukraine. And George, thank you very much for the support, first of all, but I have to say, I appreciate the kind words, but I think that's a little too high praise to call us heroes of Ukraine. We're just 2 fellows on YouTube trying to raise a little money to help out, but thank you for the very, very high praise.
And also, I would love to thank you for the support. That's high praise to the point it's getting too high, honestly. So we're gonna have to reel that back. But I do thank you so much for the support and also the kind words. It does mean a lot to us, but once again, I'm not a hero of Ukraine. Well, at least I don't view myself as one. If Zelensky has a problem with that and wants to give me a medal, that'll be something else. But for now, I don't see myself as a hero of Ukraine. And even if I did get a medal, I wouldn't see it as that. I've just been doing what I thought was right, and that was really all I was doing this for at the start. If you go back to my first stream ever, which is not public anymore on this channel because it's a gaming video, but it was me playing Train Simulator, and that's when I got the news that the war had started. the first thing I said, just, once again to remind you all of why I actually started this, I said, oh man, I have a friend in Ukraine. I hope he's okay. And that's really the whole reason why I started running streams, is because I was thinking about people like my friend Vlad and everyone else in Ukraine, and they had no news. The news had collapsed over there within the first hours of the war at that time. And so I was thinking, if anyone's going to tell them where the Russians are so that way they can try and avoid them, because the Russians are, pretty sketchy people, it would have to be me, because there was almost no one else out there that was covering what exactly was happening on the front lines day by day and where the Russians had gotten to. And so that's why I started this channel, and I've been more than happy to do it ever since. It's become something that I look forward to. It's something that I've always wanted to do, is cover current events and topics like these. And so I thank you so much for the support and so much for helping us to keep this channel running, because without people like you who've helped to support me this entire time, it wouldn't be possible. And also, just to be honest, I do feel that while the channel has gotten, of course, rather popular and a lot of people watch it, I still feel like all of my information isn't entirely accurate. Now, I know that I will argue in stuff sometimes, like about the A-10 and things like that, but still, I am open, and let me say this in a way that makes sense, and hear me out before you start typing in the comments section. I know that I don't get everything right. That's one thing that I know for sure. No one can get everything right. Everyone makes mistakes. And so I'm open to hearing people's opinions, or not opinions, contradictions that it may be, the facts I'm stating may be wrong and they may need to be revised. However, there is something that I've seen a lot, especially over the past 203 days, that has kind of made me a little, and I have noticed this myself, a little bit more obstinate to suggestions, is that most people don't understand that this isn't McDonald's or Wendy's or Publix, where you can go and like treat someone like they're an idiot and they just smile at you and go, yes ma'am, yes sir, or let me get you your ketchup or something like that. I'm a person, so when you say something, you want to say it politely, like, hey man, I like, it's great and all, but I think that like you may have gotten something wrong, please review it. And then I'll go and review it. But instead, there will be people who are like, hey, you're an idiot, and then you start getting a little bit more bristly about that kind of stuff because you assume that they're just wanting a fight. But anyways, with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $20 super chat from Mel Cortez, who is a longtime channel legend as well, who says, thank you, Enforcer and Enforcer Matt. I appreciate you both so very much. And Slava Ukraine. And Mel, thank you very much for the kind words. And also, thank you for you being here for such a very long time.
And also, I got to thank you so much, Mel Cortez. You have been here forever. And I thank you so much for being here and helping us to keep this stream running. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Mel Cortez. And also, Slava Ukraini. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And next up, we have an $18 super chat from Junebug72, who says, good evening and Slava Ukraine.
And also, good evening to you and Slava Ukraini. Also, I have been thinking about starting a second channel. So, believe it or not, YouTube actually deleted Enforcer 2.0. I did
for impersonation.
Yeah, and for impersonation, it's me. How in the world am I impersonating me? So I'm gonna try and create a second account, and I might start making little funny things, because I've had a lot of people ask me to do somewhat funny stuff, and I don't mean funny as in like, getting into like comedy territory, like, Rodney Dangerfield or anything like that. Things like voice impersonations and stuff like that. Been thinking about doing those as small standalone videos for people who enjoy that kind of stuff on this channel, but keeping it off the main one. I have been thinking about that. We might go in that direction sometime, but I don't know. But with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, and also once again, Slava Ukraini. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and next up, we have a $10 super chat from Phil Tatham, the viewer from the UK, who's also a channel legend, and a $10 super chat from Sittin' and Thinkin'. And we thank you very much to both of you for your support of the channel, and they don't leave comments. But, as always, we appreciate the support.
Also, I wanted to thank you so much for the support as well. It does help out this channel a massive deal. Now I sound like a broken record saying that. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we're moving on to the next one. But before we move on, I've seen a lot of people, apparently I misspoke for a second, didn't really say the words well. A lot of people are saying fast food workers aren't people? And no, I didn't mean it like that. I meant, and when I was saying that, I meant, let me try and figure out how to say this well without saying something again. And then people are like, well, wait a minute, what does that mean? I didn't mean that fast food workers are not people. What I meant is that a lot of people treat, because I've worked at, being a cashier before at a supermarket, people treat, like, I guess you could say service workers like that. Yeah, that's the best way to say it. People treat service workers like garbage. They treat them like they're subhuman, and they act like they can get away with it too, because you're working there, and that's just how it is. So that's what I mean, because I've been in that position before, and I know how people get treated there, and that's what I was trying to say, is that, people go around in the world and they act like because they treat fast food workers and grocery store workers like that, they can just get away with treating everyone like that. And honestly, no one ought to get away with treating anyone like garbage anywhere. I should have really tried to make that point a lot more clear than I did there, but...
And Enforcer, I'm pretty sure that everybody in the chat at some point knows what we're talking about.
Yes, I know that all of y'all know what I'm talking about, and of course I never got rude with anyone, even when they were incredibly rude to me, but still, you just feel like, like, what, do you not understand? I'm just, like, working here on a shift, it's like I'm not really responsible for the store policy. Why are you cussing me out for the store policy and stuff like that? But I hope y'all get what I'm saying a little bit better now, because I've seen a lot of people saying, wait a minute, fast food workers aren't people? No, they are. I was there before, and I know how people get treated, and I'm saying that you can't go around treating everyone like that all the time. It just makes people it makes people not receptive to what you're saying at all. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our next one, we have a $10 super chat from David Prange, who says, good job, guys. And David, thank you very much for the high praise, and thank you also for the support.
And also, thank you so much for the support and the high praise as well, once again. And it does help us out a massive deal to help this channel to keep on running with y'all's support. It's the only way it keeps rolling. And so with that, I thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Christy M, who says, this is what I read. Azerbaijan will increase natural gas exports to Europe this year by 30% as the EU seeks to lessen its dependence on Russian energy.
And who is that again? What country is that?
Azerbaijan.
Really?
That is what they said. Although I can't independently back that up because I don't know.
I don't know either, but Azerbaijan is a massive producer of oil, and so I would assume that they'd probably branch out into the field of natural gas as well. But I'm wondering, how do they get it there? I mean, I think the only country that would be neutral that they could transport it through is Georgia. So I would have to look at a railroad map to figure out if that's... Well, of course it's logistically possible. They will find a way, but... How? You know they can't transport it from Azerbaijan through Armenia to Turkey and then to a port. It would have to go through Georgia and then to Turkey, or to Georgia and then to port. So, gee, that's interesting, and that may weigh in heavily as to what the European Union will do in response to the Azerbaijanis attacking the Armenians. So, with that, I hope that addresses that comment fairly well, and thank you very much for sharing that with us. If true, that may add in a lot of economic and political, well, diplomatic complications into this entire issue for the Europeans. Also, one other thing, I'm just wondering, I know that, and I've explained this before, about the benefits of, doing trade with what may be considered unfriendly countries. You get economic sway over them, and I don't know if the EU and Azerbaijan is on great terms or terrible terms, to be honest with y'all, but at this point, considering the instability in the world, and how we're seeing that a lot of the oil and natural gas producing countries are starting to get into some questionable waters, at this point, I would see a great argument to be made for the European Union and the United States to have almost an internal market within the Western world itself, where the United States cuts everyone out of the picture that's outside of, I guess you could say, the Western sphere, the American sphere, and just start to sell its natural gas and oil into the European Union. And, of course, if need be, increase production for that. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question, well, at least address the comment fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and next up, we have a $10 super chat from Super Creech, who says, "Hi, I hope you are both awesome. Do you think Ukraine will try to get the Crimea Peninsula as well?" And then we asked Operator Starsky about that the other day, I think.
I think we did, and that's actually still a great question, Super Creech. They will eventually get Ukraine, Crimea, but the problem is that Starsky seemed to not be too optimistic about that happening this year. And to be honest with y'all, if the Ukrainians slow, because the one thing that we do have to keep in mind, the counterattack up here did ungodly well. It's done unbelievably well. However, you can't keep on pushing forever. There has to be a time where you stop, so that way these forces can rearm and resupply, because right now, I would assume that the Ukrainian military has almost outrun their supply lines, and their supply lines are hardly keeping up with them. And so they'll have to wait for more time for them to resecure their supply lines, of course, get their forces back up to, I guess you could say, maximum operational efficiency, capacity, and all that stuff, before they can launch another offensive. So I don't think they'll keep up this steamroll pace for a much longer time, but I do think they will eventually go for Crimea and try and retake it in the future, if this counterattack in the north is anything to go off of, and how successful they can be. And so with that, I hope...
And also, I was actually discussing this with a colleague today at university, and saying basically, even if Ukraine could take Crimea, is it wise to try to take it back? Would they be pushing their luck a little too far to go and try to take Crimea back, or simply have what they had before the war started in this year?
I think it would be wise for Ukraine to try and take back the Crimean Peninsula, because while it serves as a strategic location for Russia, it also serves as a strategic location for Ukraine, because Sevastopol has a much larger port capacity than any of the, I guess you could say, existing Ukrainian ports in their territory, like Kherson, Mykolaiv, or Odessa. And also, it provides a decent amount of economic activity for them as well. And so in those regards, I would say that it's beneficial for them, especially economically and strategically, to retake Crimea. And I don't think they'd be pushing their luck too much, because we've seen them conduct a decent amount of attacks within within Crimean territory, and the Russians have never really responded by escalating force. So apparently we can now see that the Russians do discern Crimea as part of the war, where the Ukrainians could directly threaten it or take it, and it won't be considered the same as the Ukrainians pushing towards a town like Belgorod. But then again, that's just my opinion, so take it with a grain of salt. And I always have to say that whenever I say stuff like this, I know I don't say it every time because it gets very redundant, but take it with a grain of salt, because this is all my assumptions. I can be right. I've been right on a decent amount of stuff in this war, but I've also been wrong on a couple of occasions, and I'm not always right on everything. No one's always right on everything. So just take it with a grain of salt. Those are my assumptions and my ideas, but who really knows? So with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well, and with that, we're on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $20 super chat from Eduardo Gonzalez, who says, "Enforcer, I worry that frontline forces, if not carefully, could outrun the combat support and the combat service support units, not to mention that the frontline units need to rest, reform, and refit to continue the assault."
And that is a great point. Now, I actually just brought that up, I think, right when he sent in that super chat. So that was kind of like a lucky streak right there. But to go back over it again, what you're saying is entirely true. Just in case anyone didn't know, in the Second World War, as a logistical tidbit, there was a huge problem that the United States faced when going through France, is that the U.S. Army was moving so quickly that there was really no way to supply them well. And we could see that that especially started to occur towards the later point of 1944, as Patton's Southern Army in France literally ground to a halt as they ran out of gasoline. Not because there was a lack of it, but because there was a lack of an ability to get it to the soldiers on the field. So they just had to stop and wait for a while for the logistical problems to be sorted out behind the lines. The U.S. would attempt to fix this problem, specifically in the northern area of France, with something called the Red Ball Express, if you've ever heard of it. I'll pull it up real quick, Red Ball Express. The Red Ball Express was a massive attempt to try and streamline the whole process and make it as optimal as possible. And we can see here, a MP, pretty much a traffic warden, and we can see that he actually has a sign that keeps the entire logistical, I guess you could say, chain updated with how many thousands of tons of equipment they've moved that day and the target that they have, which is really cool to see. That's kind of like live streaming back in the day, Matthew. Like they get a little like radio signal, that we've reached this many thousand tons, move the arrow up.
I thought, and for sure, I thought you said the Red Bull Highway for a minute. I was about to say
Red Bull, but no, it's the
gives
Red
you
Bull.
wings.
Red Bull gives you wings. But moving on down to another picture, you can see how much they were trying to streamline this. They would create different queues, different lines, and it was an incredibly efficient process. But then again, this whole entire thing I'm bringing up here shows you that if you move too quickly as a military, you can actually outrun your supply lines and end up hindering yourself far more than you're, I guess you could say, advancing yourself in the entire war. So you do have to make sure to keep those kinds of things in mind. And I think that we will see the Ukrainians stop now. They've reached the Oskil River. There's now a natural border in between them and the Russian army that will be incredibly difficult for the Russians to cross. So now they can once again, they set themselves up in a perfect situation to dictate the course of the fight in the northeastern area for the next several months while they regroup, rearm, and get these units back up to speed and up to spec, so that way they can then again continue a counterattack if they would like, or they can once again do a ruse and then conduct a counterattack in a different area, although we don't know where that will be if one did happen. So with that, I thank you so much for the support, Eduardo Gonzalez, and a very good point. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and next up, we have a $20 super chat once again from Kaltenberg, who says, I just woke up from an unintentional nap. What did I miss?
Oh man, Kaltenberg, you missed a lot. I hate that.
Did we put you to sleep, Kaltenberg? Did we?
We put Kaltenberg to sleep. Is that terrible or not? And I hate that. I'm sorry about that, Kaltenberg. We usually try and keep this as watchable as possible. And I hate that we put you to sleep, but you didn't miss a lot. We just talked about what had been going on in Ukraine today, talked about the ground that they made in the past 48 hours. They've now pushed the Russians across the Oskil River, and now, across most of the front line, they're going to be dictating the course of the war and what happens. They've kind of turned the tide into their favor completely. And so with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well, and also thank you so much once again for the support. It does help out this channel a lot and helps us to keep this thing rolling. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again, Kaltenberg, for being an Old Guard member. And also, Matthew, I just saw something really interesting there that you did, and I was like, huh. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on tonight. Kind of strange activities going on in the chat. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat, we have a $10 donation from Santiago Flores, who says, good evening, and I'm donating a live chat question. Thanks for all the great work you guys have done. And Santiago, thank you as well for always putting in big support and also always leaving us very kind words. It really means a lot to us. And as the tradition goes, this question is sponsored by Santiago Flores. And the live chat question goes to Alexis Ponce, who says, Enforcer, how do you see the October Lend-Lease changing the war?
I see the October Lend-Lease not really changing the war much. I know that it kind of comes as a shock because everyone's been waiting for the October Lend-Lease, but the Ukrainians have already gained the initiative in the war, and so the October Lend-Lease is just going to be providing more equipment that can probably be rotated out. The Soviet equipment can be replaced with the new modern Western equipment, and that will give the Ukrainians more ability, but they've already gained the initiative. So it's not going to be giving them the ability to take the initiative because they've already got it. So I think it'll just be helping them to reinforce their forces and make sure that they are a little bit better off in their offensives, although they're doing incredibly well now. And so with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well, and thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, I see a $10 super chat from Sampo Sorella, who says, here is a little donation to your coffee fund. I've been listening to you almost every evening, and it is good that you guys take the news to the masses. Keep up the good work, and Hiram Slava.
And I thank you so much for the kind words. We try and get the news out as best we can. We try and cover everything we can, but sometimes, I'll be honest with y'all, there was so many videos coming out during the counteroffensive last week that we could hardly even cover anything about it in terms of the sheer number of videos, and even at that, we had like 40 to 50 clips each night for the past 5 days. We've once again toned it back down to around 30 to 25, which is our usual number. But man, that last week was phenomenal. And I thank you so much for enjoying that because it was a huge event, so I wanted to make sure that we got as much on the news as possible. And I'm glad that you did enjoy it a lot, and I thank you so much. I try and put as much effort into it as possible, and I'm glad that you do enjoy it. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again for those incredibly kind words.
All right, and next up, Richie MC puts in a $10 super chat and throws in a spicy boy. He says, A10 supporters, and he names off a representative from Arizona, who is a former Warthog pilot and squadron commander, have said a fly-off would prove that the F-35 is not capable of fully replacing the A-10. Mic dropped. Now, Richie MC, I have to say, I'm not an expert on the A-10 or the F-35. I just know topical things about both, but I would question the veracity of that statement.
I would kind of have to question that as well, because one thing I have to say is this: a lot of people, and this is something I've talked about with Starsky too, and we've talked about this in particular with the Ukrainian military on a couple of things. Some people, and I'm not saying this to the detriment, I'm just saying this is truth. A lot of people like something. They'll like something to the point it becomes a little irrational. And so they'll sit there and be like, I like, the P-47 Thunderbolt from World War II. A replacement comes along, like the AD-2 Sky Raider. And then they go, the AD-2 Sky Raider cannot do the job the Thunderbolt does. The Thunderbolt's the best. It'll serve till the end of time. And then it gets replaced eventually because it's not as good. And one thing I have to say is that it may be true. The F-35 may not be able to, I guess you could say, have the firepower that the 30mm Gal would have, considering that the F-35 only has the M61 Vulcan, although I would have to go and do the math and the numbers again, but I think the armor-piercing rounds from the 20mm M61 are only around 16mm less in firepower than the 30mm Gal, but I would have to go back and make sure on that. But moving on from that point, the F-35 is faster. So it has the ability, just by its speed alone, to have a higher chance of survivability against a surface-to-air missile, because it can, I guess you could say, let me think about the actual wordage of it. I forgot the rock. I think it's rocking. It can rock enough at a high enough speed that it could wiggle the SAM out of a decent amount of its energy before it gets to the jet. And of course, I'm not getting everything right, so take this all with a grain of salt, but this is my knowledge of how this would work for the most part. And on top of that, the F-35 is stealth. Now, it does lose a decent amount of its stealth capabilities when it has external hardpoints mounted onto it, which is usually how it is configured for a ground strike role. F-35 ground strike. Let me see if we can find some pictures here. Here we go. Here's some of the hardpoints that are mounted onto the wings of the F-35, and that does heavily reduce its stealth signature. It makes it a lot more visible on radar, but at the same time, its cross-section is not that big, especially not as big as an A-10, and also, it largely, of course, all U.S. aircraft are made pretty much to carry the exact same kind of weapons, so this thing could carry Mavericks, Pavoys, anything you could imagine. It doesn't have as many hardpoints, though, you can tell, but I still think it would do a fairly good job, and considering its stealth, it will most likely have a better chance of survivability. Although I could be wrong on all that, so take it with a grain of salt. But getting back real quick to that, sometimes, like, especially an A-10 pilot, A-10 pilot's going to love the A-10 until the thing is 200 years old, because they served on it. Well, they didn't serve on it, they flew it. And so I get where that guy is coming from. And, but still, I think that the F-35 could probably be better in some ways, worse than others. There's always trade-offs, but I do think that the F-35 will eventually replace the A-10. Not all the way, but for the most part. And so with that, I hope that
Enforcer, I will say on the, excuse me there, I'm trying to go back and look at the super chat. But anyways, the F-35, I have to say, it does have the stealth capabilities, which is something that's very advantageous, but also I would imagine that it's a lot more expensive to maintain an F-35 versus an A-10.
Oh,
so that's
yes.
probably another thing as well. And also, it doesn't seem like the F-35 is like, I don't know how to say it. Maybe, I don't think durable is the right word, but that's the only one I can think of as an A-10.
Well, I mean, like, that's true, but the main point for this one lacking durability is that its stealth capabilities are pretty much ensuring, for the most part, that it wouldn't be hit, where it would need to have durability. The A-10, on the other hand, is on a cross section as big as an A-10, and so you can pick that thing up from anywhere, and so it does need to be survivable, at least for the pilot. And once again, I want to say this real quick, because I'm talking a decent amount to the point where I'm almost getting way out of my league. I want y'all to know that what I'm saying here is what I know. It may not be entirely true. It may not reflect the entire situation. So, take it with a grain of salt. Some people take, like, and it's fine, because a lot of people think I'm trying to talk, like, from a pedestal here, but I'm not talking from a position of experience or massive knowledge. I didn't work at Lockheed Martin or anything like that. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well, but he may be right. You know, while I think the F-35 would be very good in a lot of aspects, he may be right, and the A-10 may never be replaced by the F-35, although eventually there will have to be a replacement. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again for the support.
And also, folks, I'm not restarting the conversation on the A-10, but I'm not even sure if the F-35 and A-10 are even designed for the same thing. They're really not, I don't think. And of course, would that be a yes or a no?
Let me check real quick. F-35,
because I thought the F-35 was a fighter jet and the A-10 is more of a ground attack aircraft.
I think the F-35 is a multi-role aircraft. Let me check that. Yes, it's a multi-role, so it can do air superiority or close air support, or really anything in between. And a lot of, you know, to try and make this as short as possible, because I know we probably have a lot of questions to get to. A lot of the modern American aircraft designs are trying to utilize the ability for the plane to both be a ground attack aircraft and at the same time also be an air superiority fighter, depending on what's needed. And so we're trying to get away from specific aircraft, like the A-10 is just ground strike, and the F-15A is just air superiority, and we're trying to make everything where it can do any job, depending on the situation. So this one's multi-role, so it could do a ground support role.
Okay, all right. Well, that answers the question pretty good. And up next, moving on to our next super chat, we have a $22 donation from Jonesy, who says, "One day I will have a question." Laughing face, smiley face emoji. However, often I am working or driving and cannot watch, but you two boys sure do make great listening. Sometimes I have to stop because it sounds too awesome to miss the footage.
Well, I thank you so much for the support, Jonesy. And that's fine. You can come up with a question anytime you want. And also, that's very, you know, something that's become so interesting to me is a lot of y'all watch this, well, listen to it while y'all are driving, so y'all almost hear it like a podcast. And I never.
Yes, it's the Enforcer podcast now.
And I'll tell y'all this: I was driving back from Atlanta on an off day on a Monday, and I was coming back, and I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast for the first time ever. That was the first time I'd ever listened to the Joe Rogan podcast. And it was interesting. He was talking to some comedian, you know, I was like, they were throwing around some interesting stuff. But it hit me. I was like, some people listen to this stream like they listen to Joe Rogan. And I was like, that is really weird to me, because I'm like doing the exact same thing that some of my viewers do, which is listening to pretty much a podcast. But I thank you so much for the support, Jonesy. Also the high praise. I'm glad that it is interesting enough that you would find it worthy to pull over and watch the video. And so I thank you so much for the high praise, and thank you so much once again for the support. It helps us out a lot, and it helps us to keep this thing going. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again.
All right, and up next we have a $10 super chat from Michael Cabrera, who says, "Drink more coffee, guys. You're making too much sense."
And thank you for the support. We don't make sense all the time. Sometimes I make no sense, and I will concede that. But I do thank you so much for the support, and we will make sure to drink more coffee. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Ricardo Espina, who says, "Can the F-35 do CAS? Sure, with smart weapons, but for low-intensity conflicts or Russia, The A-10 seems to be able to survive. The A-10 is a flying bomb truck with crazy loiter time. And Ricardo, first up, thank you very much for the support. But I think we have beat the A-10 conversation into the ground at this point.
we have, and so on that one, I will concede those facts are all true, and it is a decent aircraft. And so with that, we're going to move on to the next one. And thank you so much for the support. And also, I see a lot of people talking about Joe Rogan in the chat. Yes, he does cuss a lot. I did notice that. I don't like cussing a lot on shows, especially. I don't know. It's just kind of a thing, because I will cuss occasionally off stream. But heavy cussing to me, it's just it doesn't really add much, if you know what I mean. It doesn't add a lot more than shock factor, and I'm not really into shock factor. So with that, and also I see a lot of people saying he's an idiot or something. I mean, when I was watching him, he was talking to a comedian, so he was talking within his scope. Because, he's also been a comedian. He's done a lot of stuff, but he was a comedian at a time. And so they were talking about things that comedians did. So he was talking within a scope there, but I'm sure that if you watch enough of them, there will be moments like people will probably say about my stream tonight, the Enforcer's an idiot. He was talking about the A-10. He was way out of his league, and I'm sure he has moments like that too. But I like to give people fair benefit of the doubt and be optimistic about them. And I'm sure that he's a pretty interesting fella. It's just that I don't have enough time to watch podcasts anyway. So that was just kind of like a one-off thing. And I was like, I've heard so much about Joe Rogan. Let me just watch him and see what it's about. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Adam Larson. We also have one from Suzk Sullivan, David Campbell, and Nizo Vic. And they don't leave comments, but thank you very much to all four of you for your support of the channel. And in honor of your support of our channel, we're going to read off this poll, which said, would it be wise for Ukraine to attempt to take back Crimea? And it looks like an overwhelming 87% said yes, it is their land. 7% said, I don't know. And 6% said no, it is pushing their luck. So it looks like barely anybody agrees with me on that one. But on the first option, they got 87%. I would agree that it is their land. But my point is, would it be pushing their luck? But it appears most of you disagree with me. So fair point.
And also, I would say that Ukraine should reclaim everything it had before the war. And so, of course, I agree with the majority of y'all. It's just a question of when, really. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving right along, we have a $5 super chat from Herp Derp NV, who says, France should be relieved after the past week, since they no longer will be the country known for the most humiliating route in modern history.
Read that one again.
He says, France should be relieved after the past week, since they no longer will be the country known for the most humiliating route in modern history.
Well, I thank you so much for the support, and I feel I've got to be honest with you. I feel like the French get such a bad rap for the Battle of France that's just so undeserved. I mean, like when you go through French history, they have a rich history. Regardless whether it has its shining moments or not, the Franco-Prussian War is definitely not a shining moment of French military history, but like. There's just so much. The 100 Years' War, the Napoleonic era as a whole, but still, I will agree. In the modern age, the Battle of France was a complete disappointment and a disaster. It made the French look terrible pretty much for the rest of all time because of how poorly things went for them. And I will have to agree with you that the Russians have definitely taken that title for the worst upset and defeat in modern history. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support. And thank you for a really good joke right there. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Adam Larson, who says, hey, Enforcer and Matt, what's the turnaround on captured Russian equipment? Can a Ukrainian tank battalion of T-72Bs be expected in months or weeks?
Well, I thank you for the support, and also a great question. We don't know the exact time as to how long the turnaround period is, but it seems largely that most of the captured Russian tanks go under no modifications rather than a paint job, from what we can tell, because a lot of them go into battle, and sometimes they will be missing side skirt plates and things like that that they were missing when they were captured. And so I think all the Ukrainians do is make sure to have them clearly identified as a Ukrainian tank, and then push them right back into service, because the truth is that the Ukrainians practically use the exact same specifications, modifications, and I guess you could say armor packages that the Russians use on their main battle tanks. Although there are differences. There's the T-64B in Bulat and the T-84 Oplot. But beyond that, most of them are the same. So I think they can do it in under a week, but we really don't have any clear numbers to tell you for certain. And so take that 1 week figure. Once again, the favorite dish of the Lee Spring Army is a cultural cuisine, a grain of salt. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Thomas Kruger, who says, Enforcer Matt, are you as amazed as I am at how the Ukrainians became so quickly skilled with foreign weapon systems? And Thomas, I have to say, speaking for myself, I am quite shocked, because to me, they're under a lot of pressure in Ukraine, because obviously they have Russia coming down on them pretty hard, or they did at least. Now they don't, because they're pushing them back pretty hard. But yeah, they did learn how to use those foreign weapon systems really quickly, especially considering the pressure.
And I would have to agree, they have learned it incredibly fast. Now, learning small arms is easy. If you've never really shot guns much, I highly suggest you do. It's an interesting experience just to do it once. But moving on from that, learning small arms and how to operate a totally different kind is actually fairly easy, a lot easier than people give it credit for. You can pick one up and learn how to use it within 10 minutes, really, even to your own devices, as long as you do it safely. Please don't go and get an AK and then, like, look down the barrel and pull the trigger. Don't do anything like that. If you don't know how guns work that much, you might want to have someone help you, but if you have a basic understanding of guns and you get a new one, totally different, you can usually learn how it works in 10 minutes. However, the SPGs and the more advanced technology, like the Caesar SPG, for example, it is unbelievable how quickly the Ukrainians learned how to operate that stuff efficiently. They were learning how to use it within, like, weeks, less than weeks. It's an unbelievable turnaround cycle to have a Ukrainian crew learn how to use the piece and then field it within weeks. In the U.S. military, it usually takes months for a single enlisted soldier to go through basic and then through job training. And to think that the Ukrainians did pretty much the whole job training side of things in almost half the time it would take in a normal U.S. school, and then also be as proficient at it, is incredibly impressive and a huge attribute to Ukrainians being fast learners. And so with that, I hope that also addresses the comment fairly well, because it is an unbelievable thing that the Ukrainians were able to do in that side of things. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again.
All right, and just a heads up, we do have about 15 more super chats, and we do have quite a few live chat questions. So the next question we have, or excuse me, super chat, we have a $5 donation from BC Skyman, once again, who says, the AC business has slowed down. and BC, I forgot that when it starts turning the winter, I guess the AC business would slow down. But I guess you have to start working on heaters now.
And that's crazy. I never thought start working on heaters. It just starts working on Thompson submachine guns.
Yeah, just not that type of heater.
Not that type of heater. But I thank you so much once again for the support, BC. And also, I never thought about it, but an air conditioning repairman would be a seasonal job, which is kind of weird to think about. But that makes a lot of sense. So with that, I hope it doesn't affect you. I'm sure you being an AC repairman for however long you've been, I'm sure that it doesn't affect you all too much. But that is pretty crazy to think that you're going to be going through a slow season probably for the next several months. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support, and we are on to the next one.
And I see people putting the heater jokes in the chat. That's pretty funny to read. But anyways, up next we have a $5 donation from Manny, New Jersey, who says, let's get to 100,000 tonight. And Manny, speaking of that, I see we're at 99.9 thousand subscribers. So Enforcer, do you have an exact count?
Yes, I do. We are only 86 subscribers away from 100,000.
No.
Yeah.
No. You're kidding.
No, I'm not. We're only 86 away right now, and I'll actually refresh it real quick and see. We're about to have someone say, "Oh, that makes you sound incompetent." Oh, now we're 84. But with that, we are on to the next one. Also, yes, please do subscribe, because it will get us to 100,000, and that's always been something As a person out there in the normal world, reaching 100,000 subscribers is just a cool thing. And I would love to know that we eventually reached it. And we're only 84 away. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again. Go ahead.
Go ahead and force it.
No, you can go ahead.
What?
No, go ahead.
But anyways, I was about to say, we're about to have to start calling up everybody we know to get them to quickly subscribe so we can reach that by the end of the night.
And so with that, we are on to
so
the
see,
next
Enforcer, I interrupted you just to say that. That's why I said go ahead.
Nah, it's fine. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $5 super chat from Nick Poole, who says, why do you believe YouTube didn't send me a notification? I've been subscribed since like day 40. And Nick, it's sort of finicky. Sometimes YouTube sends out notifications and sometimes they don't. There's probably a technical reason for that. You may or may not have the bell icon clicked. That could be part of it. Or it could just be our good old buddies at YouTube being a little finicky like usual. But they're good folks. They're good folks. But anyways, Enforcer, would you like to add anything to that?
Well, I mean, was he talking about the silver plaque?
Huh?
Can you reread that one again real quick? Because I was actually looking down at a live chat real quick.
He wants to know, why didn't YouTube send him a notification tonight?
You know, I don't know why. YouTube sometimes tells people when our streams and videos are up. Sometimes they don't. I don't know why. I think it may have something to do with the 2 standing copyright strikes. Hopefully one of them will be gone here in a day or two, but I can't make any guarantees because it's still there, and I feel like it's been longer than 10 business days since that thing was filed. But we'll see. And I hope that kind of answers the question in a way, and we're on to the next one.
And I see some folks mentioning the YouTube plaque. Folks, we are waiting so anxiously to see if we get one of those YouTube plaques. We've been looking forward to that moment for a long, long time. But sadly, I think somewhere on YouTube's site, it says that they may or may not send out a YouTube plaque. So it's kind of like a hit or miss. So I'm not sure the way things have been going between us and YouTube if we're going to get a plaque. But fingers crossed, hopefully we get one. We'd love to see it, and obviously we're going to put it on a video to show you guys as well, because we've been anticipating that for a while, and we know you guys want to see it as well. So up next, we have a $20 super chat from Susie Q, who says, I enjoy listening to podcasts, can do things and not have to stare at TV. You tell good stories. Is there a way to check how long I've been watching? I'm thinking at least 200 days. I missed a live only once. You guys rock.
Oh, thank you so much for the kind words again, Susie. And also, that is a really interesting thing, and I think that's why radio still is around to this day, because people just enjoy listening to things, not having to watch and listen to it at the same time. Let's see, how long have I been? I don't think there's a way to see how long you've been watching. I think you can go through your search history and see how many streams you've watched to completion, and then try and add it up. But I don't think there's anywhere that specifically tells you. And also, if you missed a live once, that's totally fine. I mean, like, good lord, it's been 200 days. You know, I think the one you may have missed would have been the night that we didn't go on, either from the copyright strike or the night we tried and then the internet went out. Because those are the only 2 days we were never able to run a stream. And so with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well, Susie Q. And thank you so much once again for the support.
All right, and moving on, we have a $5 super chat from Ultron Prime, who says, advice or ideas to spread awareness here in the USA. I wear 7 different Ukrainian shirts every day to work. Many ask how to support and to help out. And my question is this. That is really good, first of all, that you're spreading the word about Ukraine, because people do forget, because Americans have somewhat of a short attention span, or at least some of them do. Obviously, you on the stream have a pretty good attention span, or you wouldn't be focused on Ukraine still. But how do you wear 7 shirts a day? I want to know that.
He's wearing like 7 shirts at the same time. He's like wearing a gambeson.
Yes.
1 second, just in case if no one knows what a gambeson is, it's like this padded it's like this padded wool medieval armor. Like, I'm trying to find one that's like legitimate, because these are like Ren Fair stuff that's not historically accurate. A historically accurate gambeson, if I could get you all the closest example, would be something like this. Like, it's just
We're getting into Steven Seagal territory.
yeah, it's just a really thick wool, like, jacket. It's pretty much a flak jacket by medieval standards. It didn't really do much, but it would kind of protect you a little. So with that, it's interesting here you're wearing 7 shirts at the same time, and also the best way to help out Ukraine. Of course, I think it's the best way because I do it. It's through fundraisers, like to nonprofits and things like that operate in Ukraine and help them out. Of course, we can't do military ones, or, well, ones that are focused around militaristic stuff. But there are very fine nonprofits out there, like Come Back Alive, among others, that do provide things like body armor to soldiers. But sadly, due to our limitations, we can't run fundraisers like that. Also, it looks like our stream has dropped heavily in quality. But I hope that answers the question fairly well. And also, thank you so much for supporting this channel and also supporting Ukraine. And I hope that answers in a way as to the best way that one can help out. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to the next one, we have a $5 donation from Secular Sakai, who I don't think we've seen in a while, so it's good to see you again. They put in a $5 donation and say Slava Ukraine, Zive Belarus, I'm not sure what they meant to say there, down with Putin and Lukashenko.
Hey, well, I thank you for the support, and I do agree that Lukashenko ought to go too. I think if anyone's going to go first, it may actually be him, because the situation in Belarus is a lot more fragile than it is in Russia. So with that, I thank you for the support, and I do entirely agree with that statement. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and Forster, how are we looking on the subscribers, by the way?
Let me check real quick. Let's see here. We have 66 subscribers left until we reach 100K.
Oh,
I don't think we'll reach it on tonight's stream, but I think we'll reach it overnight when we wake up.
Oh, man. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat, we have a $5 donation from Lyle Murphy, who says, can you please share a comparative map of the front lines over the past few days? I'm proud to support your consistency and professionalism. Let's go, Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the support and the kind words. And also, the best way for me to show you the changes on the front lines is this dark gray field on the map. You can click on this map in the link in the description below, and it'll take you to one where you can roam around and look at it for yourself. I make this one every single day. It's custom made. I adjust the front lines myself based off of video evidence and picture evidence that shows where the Ukrainians are, and also based off of official Ukrainian reports. But this dark gray area here is the area that the Ukrainians have covered over the past several days. And so this is pretty much your front line change from a week ago to today, where the red line is now. And so with that, I hope that explains how we've been keeping track of the front line changes. And also, I thank you so much once again for the support in helping this channel keep running so we can keep on making this map. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right, and up next we have a $10 super chat from Nizovic, who says, what do you think about Bradley for Ukraine?
I think the Bradley's a great vehicle. And I know someone's about to bring up the Pentagon Wars. I'm not even going into that. That's a whole chat about what the Pentagon Wars was about. It's all a lie. It's a farce, but we'll cover that some other time. Anyways, the Bradley's really good. The Bradley does its job. It's a heavy pack and punch vehicle. It's got a 30 mil. Let me think. 20 millimeter, 30 millimeter. Let me think. M3 Bradley. I got to make sure on this one. It's a 30 millimeter, isn't it? Nope, it's 25 millimeter. I keep on getting that wrong. It's a 25 millimeter. It's like an odd caliber in my head. It's either 20 or 30 for me, and it's 25 here. But anyways, it has 25 millimeter Bushmaster. Great for dealing with light vehicles. Some heavier vehicles, not really, though. I mean, you know, you can do okay, but it's not going to be the best. But the tows, however, everyone's always focusing on guns, but there's so much to be said about a tow, especially the tow 2s. That the Bradley can use. Tow 2s actually fly over the tank that it's going for and explodes downwards and through the roof. So it's almost always a kill, and it does a really good job at it. So I would say that the Bradley would be an impressive vehicle to send to Ukraine because it has anti-tank abilities. It also has anti-infantry and I guess you could say lighter vehicle abilities. And also, just look at that little fella right there in the turret hatch. He looks like he's having a fun time in there. And so with that, I hope that answers the question, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, got to give a big shout out to Ronald Hugendorn for putting in a $20 donation, but he does so without a comment. But Ronald, thank you very much for your support, and the Enforcer is going to add a few words himself.
And of course, I have to thank you so much for the support. You didn't leave a comment, but the support does say a lot about how you want us to keep this channel running, and we will make sure to do that as long as we can. And of course, thanks to your support. Like PBS says, we thank our viewers. We thank you for helping to keep PBS running. So with that, thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Rodermax, who says, Slava Ukraine.
And Slava Ukraini. And thank you so much once again for the support, Rodermax. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Bassgirl, who says, I've been listening as a podcast also. I'm working out in the shop, sanding and painting my kid's 50-year-old wagon. I still say y'all are fantastic. Never missed a stream, except the YouTube hiccup. Much heart.
Oh, thank you so much for the support, Bass Girl. And that is really cool to hear that a lot of people do watch this as a podcast. And I think, you know, because everyone's always talking about Twitch, but no one's talked about Spotify. I think we might try and start a podcast on Spotify because I think that's where a lot of people listen to them. But we'll see, because I would actually be interested in doing this as kind of a podcasting, I guess. But with that, I thank you so much for the support, Bass Girl, and I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And also, that's an interesting little project you're undertaking there. What kind of vehicle is it? I'm actually interested about that. But with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
It's actually a wagon.
Well, yeah, but what kind of wagon?
It's the Mercedes, one of those little wagon, G-Wagon things.
A 50-year-old G-Wagon.
No, I'm lying about that. I'm just joking.
About calls bluff. But with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Blue Neptune, who says, congrats on the 100,000 subs. Blue Neptune, you're calling it too early, man. We're not there yet. He says, I noticed all the other war reporters on YouTube noticed you guys, and very cool.
Hey, well,
and I have to say, that is pretty cool, Blue Neptune. Some of the people on YouTube view us as like competitors. However, we view our fellow reporters as comrades. Well, no, wait a minute. Not comrades is a bad word to use now. Not comrades. We view them as, like, I guess you could say colleagues. But yes, that is pretty cool.
And also, I would have to say, I've found it wonderful that we've been accepted into the war reporting community incredibly well. We've gotten a warm welcome from Funker 530, Operator Starsky, among others. We've heard that Mercado has sent good words our way too, which is really cool. And it's been incredibly nice. And I never try and compete with anyone. You know, of course, we welcome a lot of them onto our show. And so, always just enjoyed it. It's been a fun time, and I'm glad that we get along with a lot of people. I never try and cause beef. It's just pointless. But I do thank you so much for the support, and I thank you so much for enjoying this channel. And also, I thank everyone, like Ronnie Fit and Operator Starsky, for backing our channel during tough times and also supporting us thick and thin. Operator Starsky's been giving us shout-outs like no tomorrow, and I gotta say, that's been incredibly kind of him. Super nice, and he's also got an incredible channel as well. And if you are an Operator Starsky fan and you're watching the stream, tell him I said that. And also, if you are not an Operator Starsky fan and you're watching the stream, go over to his channel and check it out. He is in Ukraine. He's an officer in the Ukrainian army, and he does some really interesting reports. And now he's gotten into like little short video commentary things, which are really interesting and pretty funny too. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And I have to say, that stream this Sunday, the fundraiser, was absolutely a blast with Operator Starsky on. And it is so cool that Operator Starsky does volunteer to come over and be on the streams, because he has unique insight since he's actually on the ground in Ukraine. And we actually had a pretty long conversation with Starsky after the stream ended, and he just told us about a little bit about his history and things like that. And we won't go into it on the stream because we don't know if he wants us to actually put that out or not, and we want to respect his privacy. But big thanks to Operator Starsky for actually coming on. Pretty much every Sunday we ask him to help support Ukraine. So up next, we have a $3 super chat from Apex Killzone, who says, don't you think the UK is hypocritical for supporting anti-annexation while having Northern Ireland? Oh boy.
I'm sorry, I can't even answer that one. I don't want to get a car bomb put in my car. I'm just gonna avoid that. I don't want the British coming to kick my teeth in, and I don't want the Irish coming to bomb the car. So I'm going to leave that one alone because that is a topic that is just far too political to cover. So with that, I thank you for the support, but sadly I cannot get into that one. So we're gonna have to move on to the next one. But thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $2 super chat from Florida Hacker, who does not leave a comment, but thank you very much for your support. And up next, we have a $2 super chat from Mr. Lunchtime, who donates his lunch money for the day and says, "Whatever happened to Nardia? I hope she's okay." I think he meant to say Narya.
Yeah, I've wondered what's happened to Narya too. Narya used to be here a lot, used to help out the fundraisers massively, like thousands of dollars per fundraiser. And then they've disappeared. I don't know what's happened to them, but I hope they're all right, and I hope they're doing good out there. And if they would like to hop in and let us know how they're doing, if they're fine, I would love to know because they helped out these fundraisers massively, had a heart of gold, and it was incredibly nice of them. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you for bringing that up because I've been wondering about that too, and I was hoping I wasn't alone. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Smart Lucker, who says, "Please stick on here until 100,000 subs. Take those $5 and get coffee. Let's go LSA. Proud of this channel, and I wish you all nothing but the best." And Smart Lucker, if you haven't noticed, I'm kind of like stringing out the super chats a little bit. I'm hoping we can hit that before we get off the stream tonight. So I'm kind of trying to do that.
We have 59 subscribers to go.
Oh man, it's moving slow too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we'll be able to reach it by the end of the night, honestly. But we'll see, we'll see. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and everyone's already congratulating us for 100,000 subs. But on my screen, let me check. Yeah, we haven't reached it. Actually, yeah, we haven't reached it. Sadly, we got 2 subscribers, right? Wait a minute, hang on. Oh, nope, it's we got 2 subscribers. So with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Trevor Allen, who says, "Congrats, waiting for 100,000 subs. Wow, that's wonderful."
I know, right? And also, thank you so much for the support. And it's been a long time to get to 100,000 subscribers, but it is really neat to know that we are getting here eventually. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Trevor Allen. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, the whole family pays a visit to the stream tonight. Billy, Joe, Carl, Bob, Danny, and Frank, they're all here. They're all together once again. And they say Azerbaijan has a massive pipeline going through Georgia, then into Turkey, then Greece, then Albania, then the Mediterranean, and then Italy.
And that's actually pretty crazy. I did not know that. I should have pulled up the pipelines. I never thought about the pipelines. I was always thinking about being transported by rail. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support and also sharing that information with us. I had no idea that pipeline existed. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And Kaltenberg, I saw that, and we'll get to it in just a minute. Up next, we have a $15 super chat from Not a Channel, who says, "I'm donating a question from the live chat. And as always, we will honor the tradition. This question is sponsored by Not a Channel. And this question goes to, let's see, what's a really good one? Richard Sears, who says, "Enforcer, would Turkey intervene as so-called peacekeepers?"
They're a NATO country, so that'd be very hard for them to do diplomatically, without getting NATO involved. So with that, I would most likely say no. But then again, that's just my opinion. There could be a lot of diplomatic complications, loopholes, and other, I guess, quirks and features that I'm not looking at, but I'm not entirely sure.
What are we, Doug DeMuro?
Yeah, I pulled a Doug DeMuro. You see how it has the ashtray in the lower part of the door instead of the higher part? That's a quirk. But with that, we're on to the next one. I hope we answered that question fairly well.
And up next, we have a $5 donation from Kaltenberg. He says, "Now about the A-10. And what about it, Kaltenberg? What are you trying to do? Start a war?"
What about it? What about it, Kaltenberg? What about it? I'm scared. I'm not touching that again. People either agree with me or they're trying to murder me. So with that, we're moving on to the next one, and thank you once again. Also, Matthew, by the way, let me make sure. 39.
Okay, so it's actually moving pretty fast now.
Kind of. I kind of wanted to move a little faster though, because I'm like, oh man, like my coffee wore off like about 40 minutes ago. Sadly, because I didn't drink a lot of it tonight. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Vernon Hardapple, who says, "Keep streaming till 100,000 for Hyrule."
What's Hyrule?
I don't know.
Hyrule. What's this? Zelda? Legends of Zelda?
It's a game.
It's apparently a game. I've heard of this game before. The joke is always that Zelda is actually the girl, and this boy, his name's Link. But I don't really know a lot about the game. But I do thank you for the support, and I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have another $2 super chat from Florida Hacker, who says, "Cybersecurity and electronic warfare contractor. Hello, my team hearts you."
Hey, well, I thank you so much for the support. And also, that's a really cool team to be in charge of. And so, can you read off the specific title of that again?
Cybersecurity and electronic warfare contractor.
That
and Florida Hacker, I have to say that I actually have a couple of buddies in that field, and it is quite interesting. I actually reached out to them when we had the whole issue with the DDoS attacks, and they kind of helped us come up with our solution.
And also, that is really cool to hear you're in that area. It's a neat one, and it's definitely, I guess you could say, one of the more modern fields of how things are conducted, especially since computer technology is still in its infancy, at least historically. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again.
And up next, Richard Daniel Jr. puts in a $5 donation and says, "For a regular chat." So he is now sponsoring a live chat question. And as always, this question is sponsored by Richard Daniel Jr. And the question goes to, let me pick a really good one here since it is sponsored by Richard. He says, we have a question from Dale, who says, "Enforcer, is both Armenia and Azerbaijan backed by Russia, or does Russia support both?"
I think Russia somewhat supports both of them, but if they supported one over the other, they support Armenia. No, I'd have to reconsider that, because while Armenia may be a CSTO member, in 2020, when Azerbaijan beat the Armenians, the Russians actually backed the Azerbaijanis. So I think out of the two of them, based off of prior history with how the Russians have dealt with them, they're pro-Azerbaijani. But then again, I could be wrong with that. I don't really know the intricate dealings with Russia and the Armenians and the Azerbaijanis. So with that, I hope that answers the question in a way. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we are moving back into our long list of super chats here. It looks like we have a whole bunch of $2 donations. Now, the first one we have here is actually a $4 donation from Ricardo Espina, who says, "SS Sultana boiler accident right after Civil War." And then he also says, "T-62 in the 70 Israel had a few extra."
I don't know what in particular that means. Could you reread that one again real quick?
The whole thing or the second part?
Just the second part.
He says, "A T-62 in the 70 Israel had a few extra."
Oh yeah, I think you're talking about the Turan 4. Yeah, it's the Turan 4. It's the Israeli T-54. You're actually talking about a T-62, aren't you? I don't know if the Israelis had T-62s, but the Syrians, I think they did have T-62s, so we could have gotten them from there. But that is a good point. And so with that, I thank you for the support, and also bringing that up as a way they could have gotten those tanks. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $2 super chat from Dubsy Dabster, who says, "First time chatting. I've been here since day 57.
Hey, well, I thank you so much for the support, and that is really cool to hear. That's the first time you've chatted in 150 days, and it couldn't be any sooner. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support, and I hope you've been enjoying the live chat, or at least that one live chat message. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again.
And folks, just to go ahead and dispel the myth, because I don't want anybody to get any preconceived notions in their head. Just because I have a deep voice and I'm from the South, I don't have a long beard and I don't look like the guy from Duck Dynasty. So I don't mean to disappoint, but don't want that to be like a preconceived notion of what I look like. Because it looks like we'll be doing a face reveal pretty soon.
I've got a mustache like Steve Elliott, just letting y'all know. Oh no, Sam Elliott. Sorry, Sam Elliott.
Steve Elliott.
Have you ever wanted a brand new pulling power of a Ford F-150? That was actually a bad impression. But with that, we're on to the next.
And up next, we have another $5 super chat from Richard Daniel Jr., who says, another live chat question. They are LSA family, so join. And this question is sponsored by Richard Daniel Jr. once again. And let's see, this one goes to Adam Smith, who says, can you please explain why none of the reactive armor on the Russian tanks are reacting?
That's because from what we can tell, they are either empty or they're filled with filler, like some kind of a rubber-like substance or something similar. And so with that, I hope that answers the question in a pretty short way, and also a really good one. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $10 super chat from Cakes Boo, who says, will China take over Australia and New Zealand?
No. Taking over land is not really China's forte. They always are threatening that with Taiwan, but not quite. Well, you know, once again, I'm saying this is my opinion, so take it with a grain of salt. But an invasion of Australia and New Zealand, it's just something I cannot see. It doesn't provide a lot of economic advantage for the Chinese, but it provides a lot of headache, because then they have to administer these areas, they have to spend money on them, and they get benefit a little bit, but then they also have to spend for the benefit. It would be much better for them to economically entrench themselves in a country like Australia or New Zealand, if it's possible, and then start to have large amounts of control over the government through the threat of, you know, the debts, loans, and things that they've given. They've done that a lot already to African countries and Central Asian countries, and so it's no stretch to say if a Western country got into a bind like Australia or New Zealand, they wouldn't try the exact same formula. It's worked before, why not do it again? So with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, Cakes Boo, I hope you intended to send in those two duplicate super chats, because I see that there's two of the exact same one in the live chat. But nonetheless, thank you very much for the double support. And we're moving on to our next super chat while I try to stifle a cough. The next one is from William Mitchell, who puts in a $10 donation and says, do a search for the day we took out 23 tanks in Iraq. A-10 pilots recounting how they took out tanks with their cannons. My also brother killed tanks with a 25mm Bushmaster in the Bradley.
So let's check this out here real quick. Let's see. By the time it ended, the Warthog would be credited with more than 900 tanks. The A-10 remains in service 29 years later. 395, let's see. Oh, no. Second day, I was the first lieutenant then. Oberleutnant Fliegerhausen, or whatever his name was. Captain Eric Solomonson, who went by the call sign Fish.
That's simple.
Yeah, it's a simple call sign. They always say that the call signs are made over something embarrassing, so I wonder what in the world he did that had to do with fish. Let's see. Where the tracks ended, there was a tank. Their hot engines glowed bright against the cool morning sand, making them easy to pick up for our infrared-guided Maverick missiles. We quickly nailed 6, then started blasting away with the 30mm cannons and scoring 2 more kills. Used a grease pencil on the inside of my canopy to record any burning tanks, a sure sign of a K for catastrophic kill. Fish and I were both adept with the A-10 7-barrel 30mm gun. The thing shook the plane when you pulled the trigger. You smell the spent casings even with the oxygen mask on. That smell is really distinct. If you shoot any gun, you'll know what I'm talking about, especially if it's an indoor range. It smells like, I don't know how to explain it. It kind of smells like lead. The sound is...
Kinda.
Yeah, it kind of... I don't know how to explain it, but it's mostly lead and then something else. Probably like sulfur a little. Although smokeless powder doesn't really have that smell like black powder. Let's see, but you hear it. The high rate A-10 has been upgraded. What about the report? I want to actually get the moment-by-moment report of what he hit. Let's see, we couldn't claim since we didn't see them burning. You see, this is what I'm saying right here. This is my point. And once again, I'm not saying that the A-10's gun can't take out a tank, but the point I've been trying to make, and I hope that it's clear at this point, the A-10's gun can take out a tank. It's not going to punch through its armor, though. It can catch the engine on fire, or it can knock a track out, or it can maybe a 30mm round will pierce through the barrel of the cannon, knocking it out. They could do something like that. It can't punch through the armor in almost any circumstances whatsoever. It just doesn't have the penetrative abilities, and modern tank armor, even on older tanks, is just too thick. But we can see here that he says, we heavily damaged 10 more with 30mm hits, but we couldn't claim them as kills since we didn't see them burning. And so he's been counting them as kills just if they're on fire, and so it could be an engine fire, and they're counting it as a kill because it will eventually burn out. And I'm not saying, and you know, this whole time I haven't been saying that's impossible for an A-10 to kill a tank. I'm just saying that it won't punch clean through the armor like a APFSDS round from an M1 Abrams. But I do agree with you that this does tell that story. It's just that it's in that specific way. I've been trying to say it can catch the engine on fire or something like that, but it can't punch right through the armor. So with that, also, that is really cool to hear that your brother was knocking out tanks with the Bradley. I would not doubt that for a second. The Bradleys are incredibly good armored fighting vehicles, some of the best in the world for their class. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again.
All right, and up next, we have a $5 super chat from the whole family once again. Billy, Joe, Carl, Bob, Danny, and Frank.
Oh, crap, Matthew, we're 14 away.
Oh, I thought you were about to say we hit 100,000.
Oh, we're 14 away.
Sorry, folks, I didn't mean to blow your speakers out. But anyways, moving back to that super chat, we have that one from the whole family who says, and to add fuel to the fire, the Soviets had a smaller and lighter and greater rate of fire multi-barrel autocannon minigun equivalent to the Gall 8-A.
And that's true. They actually put that on the MiG-27, I believe, if I'm correct. Let me pull it up and make sure. Let me make sure. Let me go down here. Armaments. The Gish. Let me find that specific one. The Gush 630. Yep, that's it. Interestingly enough, y'all probably not believe this. This gun is actually the Soviets' version of the CIWS. I forgot the name for the land-based variant. But this is what it was. It was put onto Russian like frigates and such things, and then they took it and they put it on a plane, and it didn't do well because the MiG-27's a MiG-23 redesigned for ground attack. Really all they did was change the nose cone, so that way you could actually look down at the ground. And the gun was so strong, it vibrated the plane so badly, it could actually cause irreparable damage to the plane in flight by firing the gun. But it is statistically better. It does fire a larger burst mass, it has a higher rate of fire, and the gun, I believe, armor penetration-wise, does the same, if not just a little bit better. But the airframe it was put on was so fragile that you could never really use it. But still, that is a great point, the whole family. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have another one from the whole family who says, I give you the GSH 6-30A versus GAW 8-A. Rate of fire 6,000 versus 4,200 rounds per minute. Weight 149 kilogram versus 281 kilogram. Muzzle velocity, meters per second, 845 versus 1,066. So only in the last category, the GAW beats out the Soviet counterpart, but the MiG-27 couldn't handle it. To learn more, check out the YouTube channel, Paper Skies.
You know what's crazy, Matthew, is that I only read the first one and I said all of that. It's good to know we're on the same page, and pretty much have already covered it, I guess. But I thank you so much for
which one of y'all came up with that, though? Billy, Joe, Carl, Bob, Danny, or Frank? It surely wasn't everyone.
It probably wasn't everyone, but, you know, we can only guess. But with that, I thank you so much for the support, and I hope that we addressed the question fairly well. And so with that, everyone, it's time to go back and look at our subscriber figures, and we are at 99,990. We are 10 away from 100K.
No.
Just 10. And so with that, we are now on to the next one. And also Matthew, I hate to ask this, but I've run out of water and my voice is starting to get a little used up, I guess you could say. So
Used up?
yeah, so during this next question while I'm answering, could you maybe run and get me a water? Because I feel like my voice
What do
is
you think
about-
I am, the water boy or something?
I'm not trying to make you the water boy or the meter maid or anything, but my voice is about to give out if I don't have some water in the next second or two. But
And I see, folks, I actually came prepared. I have a little bit of water next to me. I've been over here choking and trying to drink water at the same time. It's not working that well. But sure, Enforcer, I can do that. But first off, let me read the next question so you do have a topic of discussion. Let's see here. Also, real quick, the poll I put up, I said A10. The first option was where's the window? The second option was lovely talk. It looks like 53% said lovely talk and 47% want to be the next person out of a window.
well, with that, it's a pretty interesting poll. It's just an interesting poll, and so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a super chat from Rico Marrero Maldito Viajero, who puts in a $5 donation and says, greets from FRM from a U.S. Army vet. The best Russia can do is hand over Putin and his cronies to be court-martialed if they want to survive as a country.
And that's a pretty good point. Another thing that they can do is that they could also sentence him in Russia themselves for crimes against the people and appease everyone by doing it themselves, so it still looks like Russia retains its autonomy and its ability to prosecute its own people without sacrificing any of its dignity and fix the issue that way. That's another equal way that they could do that. So a pretty fair point, actually. And also, greetings from Puerto Rico, former U.S. Army vet. We have a lot of viewers from Puerto Rico in the Lee Spring Army. It's actually insane to think about how many there are. But moving over there real quick. Let's see, Puerto Rico. I was looking at Alabama. I don't know why I did that. Puerto Rico. We have one viewer who's from Arecibo. But I don't know where you're from. You could be from San Juan, which is, I would suppose, where most people are from in Puerto Rico. But then again, I don't really know. And hopefully Matthew's getting that water, because I'm being honest with y'all, my voice feels like sandpaper at this point because I don't drink any water during this whole show. I really don't have time to do it. So yeah, this one's going on incredibly long. Usually we try and cut it off at this point. So hopefully... Oh, there we go. Hey! Thank you, Matthew. Thank you. So he just got me a water. 1 second, everyone. I got to try and unscrew it. And there we go. It's kind of like... That one was a little messed up. 1 second. This one was a little messed up. The cap was. Like, you unscrew it, but it never really caught on to the, whatchamacallit. Like the screw, you know what I mean? And so you just sat there and spun it, you know what I mean? But anyways, thank you so much, Matthew. Huge thanks to Matthew. He just ran and got me a water. My throat still feels like it's gone through torture tonight. So let's see how many subscribers we have left before my poor voice can have a break. So...
And I saw Island
Oh
Time
my
say in the
god,
live
we're at
chat,
99,999!
Oh my!
Oh my god! That is insane. We are one subscriber
Dang, we're
away.
so close, folks.
We are one.
I saw Island Times say in the live chat, "Thanks, Waterboy." I remember that reminds me of that meme of the kid.
100,000! Let's go! Let's go! We did it! We did it! We've reached 100,000. Finally, 100,000 subscribers. We've done it. It's there. And so someone's about to unsubscribe and bring it back down to 99,999, aren't you?
I don't see it saying 100,000 though.
Oh, dang it! Now 3 people have unsubscribed, so it's not at 100,000. We were at 100,000 for just 1 minute,
folks?
So
people are saying unsub now. Y'all don't understand. Y'all reversing the result.
Now it's going back up, but wait a minute. We just gained. Oh, now it's back up at 100,000. Yeah, let's go! All right. So with that, we're gonna have to put a cutoff on the super chats. I'm sorry, y'all, but I can't keep talking. And we've also, since we've answered so many live chats through super chats, we're going to waive that segment tonight since we've answered like 6 or 7 of them. So we're gonna wrap up everyone else's super chats and then we're gonna round it out for the night because I can't talk anymore, or else I won't be able to talk tomorrow. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And folks, can you believe it? We're at 100,000. Dang. That means a face reveal is in order. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
And also, M90 Regal Grand Sports said, "Can we get a yes, sir?" And there you go.
Yes, sir.
And yes, sir. Yeehaw! And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Jack Ray, who says LSA 100,000.
LSA 100,000 indeed. And thank you so much for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, I want to recognize a $2 super chat from Dupper Bob, as well as a $5 super chat from Vernon Hardapple once again. And then we're moving right along to a $5 super chat from Mr. Awesome Noob, who says greetings from Burlington, Iowa.
And thank you so much for the support. And I will pull up Burlington real quick. I'm sorry if I don't talk much from here. Like, it's hurting right now to talk. Burlington, Ohio. There we go. Oh, it's on the Ohio River. Let's check it out. It's got a Walmart. Looks pretty neat. It's a normal American town. So with that, thank you so much for the support, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Richard Daniel Jr. once again. He says, another live chat question. We need to hit 100K. We are so close, and we've done it, Richard. He says we can do this, people.
And
so
we did.
One more live chat question from the spreadsheet, and it looks like this one goes to Fern Joseph, who says, have you seen the video of the Russian vehicle falling on its side? And yes, we did. It just fell right over.
And so with that, I hope we answered the question, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $3 super chat from Bass Girl, who doesn't leave a comment, but sends us a picture of Cheems and says, my hero, and it looks very humble.
Well, I thank you for the support, and I thank you for throwing in Cheems for a second. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $2 donation from Bringer of OD, who says that was clearly a 20, probably as in TGT a number 20.
I don't know what that's in reference to, but I do thank you for the support, and I would look into it, but I can't talk right now. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
Oh, and I see on my end, it's showing 100,000 now, so it's official.
It's actually showing on my end 100,015 now.
What do you know? Did YouTube send us anything special? Like an email?
Let me check real quick. I'll check on my phone, so that way I don't show my email on stream.
YouTube's now going to be like psych, third copyright.
Yeah. No, they haven't sent us anything. Let me check my YouTube studio. I'm sure they've congratulated us on there, right? I mean, you know, like that would make sense. Nope. No, they haven't said it. They haven't said anything yet. No.
Well, like, maybe it takes a while for the algorithms to get tripped.
Maybe it takes like an hour or something. So with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $2 super chat from Drew, who says, it's a bird, it's a plane. Yep, it's just an A-10.
And it is. And also, it's the largest point of arguments and contention. Oh, now I'm getting confetti now that I click on the analytics thing again. When I click on it, it puts up confetti for 100,000. But with that, I thank you for the support. And also, it is an A-10. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, a big shout out to Richard Philpott for putting in a $10 donation. My mind is starting to go, folks. But thank you very much, Richard, for that $10 donation, and we appreciate it very much. And up next, we have a $4 super chat from CA Lags, who says, Crimea is key for Black Sea gas, and F-35 SDB-2 from 20,000 feet beats Gaul from 500.
And I thank you for the support, but due to my voice being so worn out right now, honestly, I cannot, unfortunately, get in depth on that one at this moment. But I do thank you for the support, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $2 donation from Coltenberg, who says A-10 limit reached. And I have to agree with you on that one, Coltenberg. I think we have reached it. And it looks like half the audience has as well. They want to find a window. But thank you very much for the support.
Matthew, we need to make A-10 merch.
Oh, no.
Oh, God.
Oh, no.
But with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again, Coltenberg. I agree.
All right. And up next, we have a $2 donation from Nick Poole, who says live chat question. And we will honor that. We are going to go find one more live chat question. And this one goes to, let's see, Vitaly, who says, have you guys heard any reports of Russian brigades negotiating surrender in Kherson?
We have not, unfortunately, but if we do get news on it, we will report on it first thing. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $1 donation from Cakesboo, once again, who says, how does YouTube dictate what's allowed? OMG. And they get to dictate it because they're in charge and we're at their mercy. So that's why. But thank you very much for the support once again, Cakesboo.
And also, thank you once again for the support. And Matthew pretty much answered it fairly well. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 donation from Cher, who says, love you guys, y'all rock, and congrats.
And thank you so much for the support, Cher. And thank you for the kind words as well. I would comment a lot more, but my voice. And so with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right. And it looks like for our last super chat of the night, we have a $1 donation from Digital Bladeka, who says, really liked your Queen Elizabeth video Enforcer.
And thank you so much. Not a lot of people watched that one. It only got 13,000 views, which is low. But I'm glad that the people who did watch it did enjoy it. It was more of a tribute to the Queen's final journey, and I'm glad that a lot of people did enjoy it. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. And also, just once again to reiterate, we have answered so many live chat questions through sponsored live chats tonight, through the super chats, that we're waiving that segment because my voice cannot stand up. So with that, I thank everyone so much for watching. We have done it. We've reached 100,000 subscribers on day 203 of the war. And it's still climbing. We're up to 10,022 right now. And I would sound a lot more excited, but if I do, I won't be able to run a stream tomorrow because I probably wouldn't be able to talk. So with that, thank you all so much once again for watching. It has been a pleasure to cover the news, and it's been a pleasure to reach 100,000 subscribers with the entire Lee Spring Army. And so with that, I will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover day 204 of the war in Ukraine. Thank you all, and have a great night.
Запануєм і ми, браття,